Chapter 24-25, The Reason of Death. The second blind Chen opened his eyes. Countless people in the immediate area closed their eyes. The bright light pricked their eyes painfully, especially those cultivators from the four major forces. Some of them even had blood oozing from their eyes. The sight was terrifying. Futian's eyes were still open. Although they hurt a bit, he continued to watch. Blind Chen seemed to have turned into the light itself. His entire body was radiant and bright. It was almost as if he was transparent. He had morphed into a phantom of the light, unleashing its endless brightness at Patriarch Lin. He drowned him with the light in an instant. At the same time, the light was also blasted at the other three cultivators. Patriarch Lin was terrified right now as a monstrous might erupted from him, and his incomparable sword will bloomed. His body soared into the sky, turning into a sword, wanting to escape through the air. Clearly, he had detected a strong sense of danger. He knew that this was no place to linger. He had heard the determination in Blind Chen's tone when he was speaking before. Blind Chen wanted to use his life to take the lives of these other four. He had never intended to stay in the world for long. Before he left, he wanted to take them with him. Patriarch Lin rushed straight into the sky, but the light flooded everything. After images appeared there, but at this moment, even those after images had gradually become more and more elusive under the light until they, too, turned into countless spots of light. It was as if it had been purified by the light, reduced into nothing but dust. The purification of light. The divine method of light. The expressions of the other three cultivators were one of great fright. Rumor had it that this was the divine method created by the God of Light and could purify all things in the world. This method was particularly terrifying, and it was said that only the God of Light's heir may learn of this forbidden technique. How could Blind Chen do it, then? However, Blind Chen seemed to be urging this forbidden technique at the expense of the gods. No, there was an unwilling roar that came from the void. A massive face appeared above the sky. It then dissipated little by little, turning into countless spots of light. Someone as powerful as Patriarch Lin, who had survived the divine tribulation, was killed by a single thought, with nothing left. By the time the other three realized something was wrong and tried to escape, the light had already obscured the sky and covered the boundless space. Another phantom appeared above the sky, which was transformed by the shadow of Blind Chen. He seemed to have turned into a deity now, as the light was shining all over the space and directly shrouded the three people who were fleeing. Old diviner, we have no grievances nor grudges with you. Why resort to such fatal attacks on us? Patriarch Lan pleaded loudly. Old diviner, I swear I won't touch Chenyi. The patriarch of the Yu family also shouted loudly. Their voices reverberated through the boundless void, all begging for mercy in the hopes that Blind Chen would spare them of their lives. Those incomparable eyes of light were emotionless in the void. With a turning of his mind, the light that could purify all things came showering down, directly on top of the three cultivators, drowning their bodies in its brilliance. The three of them let out an angry growl to no avail. They watched their bodies disappearing little by little while their consciousness was still intact. Still, their bodies were disintegrating. The fear in their voices was palpable. It took many long years for them to cultivate to the level they were at now, and they were almost at the very top of the cultivation world. The city of light aside, even in the lands of the divine prefecture and all the major worlds, they were still qualified as top cultivators. And yet, were they to die just like this? The light's purification of the divine method descended, and the three of them gradually turned transparent. Soon, these three top cultivators evaporated from the world. It seemed that in their demise, they had been turned into a part of that light. As of this moment, the top four cultivators from the City of Light were killed. All of them had been killed by Blind Chen. Many cultivators from the City of Light were looking this way, and many more had gathered around. They look at the elusive figure in the void, an existence that was almost akin to a god. Who could have imagined that this was the Blind Chen who was walking with a cane not so long ago? The descendants of the four major forces felt a little surreal. It was like they were in a dream. That hunched blind man, who seemed as if he knew nothing about cultivation, had killed off their patriarchs. Previously, Many of them had even suspected that Blind Chen was a conman with no abilities whatsoever. Now they realized just how ridiculous that idea seemed in retrospect. However, Blind Chen's form seemed to appear even more elusive at this moment. As if he was unable to turn his head, the phantom above the sky looked toward Yi Futian and said, "My friend, don't forget what I asked of you." "Sir, there was no need to do this." Yi Futian sighed. Blind Chen's smile was enigmatic. Then his eyes drifted in the direction where the portal of light was. His eyes were full of piety once again. Then, his figure gradually disappeared and turned into a light, dissipating little by little between heaven and earth. He got what he came for. As the emissary of light, Blind Chen completed his mission and found the heir to the light. From now on, he was no longer needed in this world. Yi Futian watched him disappear, but there was turbulence in his heart. In the last words left by Blind Chen, he thought of something else. Before Blind Chen, another existence was known as a prophet who had experienced the sitting death just because he took one look at Yi Futian. The prophet claimed that he had peered into the secrets of heaven. Although Blind Chen said it was because his mission had been completed, he would no longer tarry in this world. Was this the real and only reason? If he wanted to, he could have stayed on to take care of Chen Yi even if he had just completed the mission. There was no need to fight the 4 major cultivators to the death. Then, there was another possibility: it might be because of him. Blind Chen told him that because someone else came to him first, he had asked Chen Yi to search for Yi Futian. Then, this whole affair could still be related to his own origin. Why was it that everyone who may know about his origin met a similar fate? Was there something more hidden behind what met the eye? Could he be overthinking the whole thing? Yi Futian had a strong suspicion that Blind Chen's death was just a piece of the puzzle. He might have made a promise, like once Yi Futian helped Chen Yi inherit the light, Blind Chen had to go away. Teacher. Fang Kun and several other youngsters were a little confused. Although they were in the realm of Renhuang, they had never cultivated outside. This time, as they were following Yi Futian to the outside world, they had been diligently observing everything around them. Yi Futian didn't explain much because there was no way to explain things of this nature clearly. In the meantime, Blind Tai and Hua Jiyu had come to his side. The cultivators from the 4 top forces were looking at Yi Futian. Now that Blind Chen and the 4 great patriarchs had perished together, only the cultivators from the 4 major forces were left with Yi Futian and his party. A grievance was born today, but other than the 4 patriarchs, who could possibly touch a hair on Yi Futian? Lin Kong's death was still fresh in their memory. Although there were still cultivators in the peak Renhuang realm among them, none of them dared to attack Yi Futian now. Yi Futian surveyed the crowd, and there was an insouciance in his eyes. These people no longer concerned him since the 4 great patriarchs had already fallen. He had no problem handling the likes of the patriarchs, so the cultivators from the 4 principalities were of no interest to him at all. Are they all dead? At this moment, a strange hoarse voice came from a distance, with a degree of wickedness. Then, an extremely tyrannical aura enveloped this space, and everyone who remained expressed a look of concern. Was there still someone of this level hidden behind the scenes? The more dead, the better, the voice said. Its tone was uncanny. In the next moment, a figure dressed in black appeared in the sky above. Chapter 24-26, Departure. Who is that? Everyone looked quite surprised as their attention was captured by the figure in black that appeared. This man's aura was dark and chilling as he surveyed the crowd below. In the great bright city was another tyrannical cultivator, such as this one who, right under their noses. He looked at the portal of light and said, "I have waited for this day for many years, and now it's finally here. Is this the heir of light?" When he spoke, there was an icy sneer in his eyes. No one knew who he was. Obviously, this person had been keeping himself hidden before, so that he went undetected by the people of the great bright city. Nor had he ever revealed his own strength as he lay in wait in secret. This is disastrous, the cultivators from the 4 major principalities secretly remarked to themselves. They had no idea how long this man had been inside the great bright city, as he had been lurking in the shadows until this moment. No wonder he meant to reap what benefits there were to be had after Blind Chen and the 4 patriarchs had fallen. Now, who else could stop someone at this level? The cultivators of the four major forces had paved the way for Chen Yi. But now, would blind Chen Yi, and the others hand over everything to this man in the dark? The man in black redirected his gaze from the portal of light and swept over everyone around. He then released a horrific aura, and suddenly, a dark divine wall appeared between heaven and earth. The wall blocked out all the light and continued to expand to seal off this void. Elder, someone appeared to be quite alarmed at this juncture and said, "We will leave right now and will not interfere in any matter that happens here. The inheritance of the light has nothing to do with us either." A sneer flashed across the man's face, and he said, "Why don't you just sit tight for the time being?" He wanted to see if Chen Yi could really inherit the light. If he were to seize it, he couldn't very well leave any witnesses. Everyone here would have to die. This man harbors a strong murderous intent. "I am afraid no one will be left alive," Hua Qingqing said to Yi Futian via voice transmission. Yi Futian knew that while they were setting the four principalities up, this man had been waiting for his moment in the dark. He meant to seize the inheritance. Naturally, he would want to get rid of all the evidence. He had hidden his identity so that no one knew of his existence. If he were able to intercept the inheritance of the Temple of Light, he clearly could not risk anyone knowing who he was. This person's plotting mind was terrifyingly calculating. As if he had sensed Yi Futian's gaze, the man in black looked down at Yi Futian and said, "I'm a little curious about you. Who are you?" "I'm just an ordinary cultivator," Yi Futian replied. "The elder's cultivation must not have gone unnoticed in the divine prefecture. Not many know about me." The man in black said, "How can the person invited by blind Chen be someone ordinary? You are not forthcoming with your answer. Do you need me to force it out of you?" Yi Futian said, "Of course, if Elder wants to know, I am obligated to explain clearly and thoroughly." As soon as he said that, Yi Futian waved his hand, and suddenly a physical form appeared in front of him. When that body appeared, everyone in the surrounding area instantly felt a strong oppressive force. In the void, the man in black was looking at that body as well. Yi Futian's spiritual soul then came out of his own body and poured into that physical form. Suddenly, the divine body opened its eyes. "That's not right." The face of the man in black became alarmed. Right at the moment when the divine body opened his eyes and raised his head to look at him, his eyes felt a piercing pain. He felt as if that great path was about to annihilate everything. "This is a divine body," he shouted. "You come from the original realm. Elder knows quite a lot." A voice came from the divine body. In the next moment, the divine body broke through the air, and a terrifying divine light appeared between heaven and earth. The man in black wore an expression of pure shock. A horrific aura of the great path descended, and countless divine lights transformed into sword lights, covering the sky and obscuring the sun. That divine body transformed into a sword that seemed to slice open the heavens. Its speed was unimaginably fast, and it cleaved open the sky in but a moment's time. Many looked up at the radiant sight before them. The void that was previously sealed was splitting wide open and riddled with holes. Bang! The body of Shunjia the Great Emperor returned to its place. Yi Futian's spiritual soul, once again, returned inside as he put it away. Looking again above the sky, the figure of the man in black gradually became more and intangible. There was a desperation in his eyes as he looked at Yi Futian, who was down below. He had always acted cautiously in his life, keeping a low profile to avoid attracting any attention to himself. He didn't expect that he would die like this today. This was Yi Futian of the original realm, and that was the physical form of none other than Shunjia the Great Emperor himself. If there were any Ren Huang in the 8th realm in this world who could slay him, then it could only be the man in front of him. Why did he have to be here right now? The phantom evaporated, and the man in black disappeared from the void. His soul and spirit scattered and dispersed, and he was killed by a single sword strike. The cultivators from all four major forces froze when they bore witness to this scene. They looked at Yi Futian with great horror. How could they have known that he was as frightening as this? Even if blind Chen didn't open his eyes, the four great patriarchs would have perished in his hands anyway. That physical form was the divine body. Many years ago, it was rumored that in the Shangqing domain, the physical form of Shunjia the Great Emperor had appeared and had been acquired by a young man named Futian. Many top cultivators could not resonate with the Great Emperor's divine body, but that young genius talent was the only one able to do it. It was said that the young man had amazing talent. Many people had heard of this law, especially the cultivators from the 4 top forces. After all, any relic of the Great Emperor was of great interest in the world and inevitably attracted a lot of attention. The white-haired young man in front of them was that stunning and enchanting figure, Futian. So, it was him. No wonder Blind Chen invited him to come. It would seem that Blind Chen had already known. It was ludicrous that the 4 major forces wanted to put up a fight. In the eyes of the others, it was but a joke. Futian had never considered them as viable threats. At this moment, Futian turned to look in the direction of the portal of light. He did not bother to look at those cultivators. It seemed as if he didn't care whether they were there or not. This made the 4 major forces feel particularly self-conscious. It seemed that they were not worthy of being even considered by him. Futian waited quietly. To him, the matter here was not worth the time or effort. He was just a passerby. When Chen Yi came out, he would be able to embark on the rest of his journey. However, the whole affair with Blind Chen still left some impressions on his mind. Who was behind this? Why did Blind Chen end his life like that? No one could give him the answer to any of this. Anyone who might have an answer was not around him at this time, or that they had fallen. This mystery looked as if it would not unravel any time soon. Time passed slowly. After a long while, a clear sound was heard. The portal of light showed some fissures, which then shattered and cracked bit by bit. From that portal of light which was breaking apart, a figure walked through. This figure was bathed in divine light. It was Chen Yi. He seemed to have undergone some transformation, and his entire temperament had changed so that he was more like a descendant of the light. When Futian saw this sight, he knew that Chen Yi had already inherited the light. He had been successful. Chen walked to Futian's side without saying anything remotely like a thank you, but he remembered everything in his heart. He looked around but did not see Blind Chen. He sighed inwardly as if he knew how things had ended. Indeed, Blind Chen had told him already. "Let's go," Futian said softly. Chen Yi nodded. The group then went on their way. Chapter 24-27, The Body Divine Tree. A few months later, a flying boat was traveling through the endless void. The void was full of darkness with terrible spatial turbulences to boot. Some of these turbulences even contained the terrifying and destructive aura of the Great Path. The flying boat was like an unsteady tumbleweed, bumbling shakily through this void. "It's really far," Futian mumbled to himself. A spot of light was floating in front of him, as if a certain coordinate was hiding within, guiding them. It was something given to him by the teacher to guide him in his quest for the location of the Western world. Without such an item, it would not be easy to locate the Western world. It was simply impossible for any ordinary cultivator, who may perish at any moment, to travel through this endless void. Even Futian himself had encountered many dangers along the way while traveling through this space. At the rear of the flying boat, there was Chen Yi, sitting cross-legged, cultivating quietly. He was constantly surrounded by the light, which illuminated the boat. "Teacher, look ahead." At this time, a cry came out, and it was little Ling. She looked into the far distance, where an extraordinary shocking sight emerged in front of them. It was slowly coming into focus in all of its spectacular splendor. "I saw it," Futian nodded. His vision was much better than little Ling, so he had already seen it, but it was pretty fuzzy before. In the endless darkness and emptiness, a golden divine light appeared. A tree, like a tree of the world, was growing in this vast universe. This tree had been endowed with numerous branches and leaves, bright and lush. This towering divine tree was glowing with a golden divine light that seemed to be guiding their way. Futian knew that the divine tree of the world in this vast universe was really quite far away from them, which was the reason why they could see the shape of the divine tree. If they were closer, they would only see parts and not the whole. It was similar to looking up at the night sky and discerning the shape of those stars or even the formations of stars. The same principle was at work here because the ancient tree of the world was still so far away that it didn't appear to be very large. However, as they were getting closer, they found that it was actually a massive world. The legend is true indeed, the Western world is a body tree, Hua Qingqing said softly. Her voice was soft and gentle as she looked at the spectacular sight in front of her with some emotions in her heart. Each flower is its own world, and each leaf is a body tree, as they say. Yi Futian whispered, what exactly happened after the heavenly path collapsed in ancient times? The body tree of the world was once part of the heavenly path. After its collapse, it was scattered to one side. Later, some had proved the way under the body divine tree, spreading the words of their belief in the Western world. Gradually, the Western world became a part of Buddhism, Hua Qingqing responded softly. The body divine tree has countless branches and leaves, and if one leaf is one world, then there are many, many worlds. Yi Futian was amazed in his heart by this revelation. They continued to move forward, and sure enough, even at the startling speed they were traveling, the distance seemed to remain the same for a long time. They did not seem to be getting any closer to their destination, so it was obvious that the place they saw was, in fact, extremely far away from them. However, as they kept moving forward, the body tree eventually became enlarged in their field of vision. The closer they were getting, the bigger it became until they could no longer see the entirety of the body tree except for countless golden worlds. Vaguely, they could perceive that there were numerous living things inside. Finally, they came to the outer parts of the body tree, where countless golden divine lights were circulating. In the outer area of the Western world, there was a light screen with what appeared to be golden quicksand. Yi Futian could faintly perceive the power of Buddhism that was contained within as it stood guard over the body world. Be careful, Blind Tai cautioned, having vaguely detected the potential danger of this golden quicksand. Even the turbulences of the Great Path were blocked by it and could not find their way inside, which attested to its frighteningly powerful defense. Yi Futian nodded. Suddenly he was surrounded by divine light, which also shrouded the flying boat. Immediately, sword-shaped runes appeared around the boat. Buzz! The flying boat sped up suddenly, rushing directly into the golden streamers. In an instant, the defense around the flying boat was attacked by a horrific force. The quicksand slammed into their defensive light screen while the flying boat was swept into the storm by the fast-moving quicksand. Yi Futian and the others felt that everything was now spinning out of control, and they could no longer see where they were. They could only feel that the flying boat was traveling at a frightening speed. It was as if they had been swallowed up by that storm of quicksand. Yi Futian did not panic. Although his body was constantly turning upside down and whichever way, he maintained his composure. The life spirit of the ancient tree of the world in his body was swaying as well, and the divine glory of the great emperor was circulating about him. It turned into an absolute sword domain. As it formed a protective cover over the flying boat, it was impervious to all kinds of methods, including the terrifying attack that buffeted them. "Teacher," little Ling called out. Her body was being knocked about constantly. She seemed on the verge of panic as they were caught up in this storm of quicksand. "It's nothing," Yi Futian replied. Suddenly a small smile appeared on little Ling's face. The simple response from her teacher had settled her. She believed they would pull through just fine. After an unknown period of time in this storm of quicksand, Yi Futian and his party finally got tossed out. The flying boat returned to its previous steadiness as they continued traveling in the sky. They found that they were no longer in the outer realms but were now inside a world. Land. Looking down, land could be seen. It was populated by many cultivators with varied realms. "The Western world is here," Yi Futian whispered, and Chenyi opened his eyes. "We probably just landed on a leaf of the body tree," Hua Qingqing whispered, and Yi Futian nodded in agreement. That body divine tree was synonymous with the entire Western world, and each one of those numerous branches and leaves was a world of its own. They were swept in here by the storm of quicksand. Very possibly, this was just a leaf of the body divine tree. How come there are not many monks? Fang Kun looked down and saw in the distant land. There were not many monks to be seen. Buddhism of the Western world is a supreme principality, but it is a human world, after all. How can they all be cultivating Buddhism? Most of them are cultivators of other sorts. Is it possible that everyone in the divine prefecture cultivates in the same ability as Donghuang the Great? Yi Futian asked him in return. Fang Kun scratched his head in confusion and finally replied, I guess that is the case. However, most of the top cultivators here must cultivate in Buddhism, said Yi Futian. They looked forward and saw the clouds seem to have turned into a gold color, and a golden celestial mountain seemed to appear in the distance, floating in midair. Then they heard a long and sustained howl. A huge demonic beast came out of the golden clouds and mist, splitting open the space with incredible speed. The clouds and mist tossed and roared as Yi Futian and the others felt an imminent danger. Soon after, they saw a gigantic golden divine bird swooping down at them. Golden winged rock! Yi Futian and the others exclaimed as they looked in front of them. They had just arrived, and there was already an attack by the divine bird. Was this some welcoming party? Chapter 24-28, Control. The sharp claws of the golden-winged rock ripped through the air. The golden claws tore through the space and covered this corner of the world. It was swooping down at the flying boat occupied by Yi Futian and the others. Blind Tai stepped forward and raised his hand to blast out the golden divine hammer, suppressing the void without absolute might. Bang! There was a loud boom as the claws collided with the divine hammer in an explosion of brilliant golden light. The golden-winged rock flew back in retreat, then planted itself firmly above the golden clouds. Its wings spread wide to shield the sky and the sun. Its eyes were extremely pugnacious. His head now turned into a human head. His eyes were golden in color with an extremely intense look. This reminded Yi Futian of the little condor. It was a pity that the little condor's cultivation was not yet high enough for him to cultivate in the starry cultivation court. Otherwise, he could have elevated his realm like everyone else, and he would be here exploring with them. Outsiders, which world are you from? The golden-winged rock uttered, which revealed that he knew that Yi Futian and the others were coming from the outside world. It seemed that he knew they were drawn into this world by the storm of quicksand. We came from the divine prefecture, traveling to the western world for trials. We hold no ill will, Yi Futian replied to the golden-winged rock. However, this divine bird was defiant by nature. His eyes remained fierce, and he continued staring down Yi Futian and his people. There was an otherworldly spirit in those eyes. Since you are guests from afar, please follow me to the mountain, the golden-winged rock said as he looked at Yi Futian and the others. Although it seemed like an invitation, his tone was rather forceful. Yi Futian glanced at the golden celestial mountain in the distance. It seemed to be floating on top of the golden clouds. There was a glorious ancient temple on the celestial mountain, which this golden-winged rock had presumably come from. However, he could also see that this golden-winged rock had ulterior motives, and none of them were good for them. But, as newcomers, they had no idea why the rock felt offended and had started attacking them right from the start. We just got here and have no idea which world this is. What place is that celestial mountain ahead of us? Yi Futian asked. This here is Six Desires Heaven, and the celestial mountain ahead is the divine mountain of Six Desires Heaven, known as the Holy Land of Six Desires Heaven. Your presence here is most fortuitous. You should find some time to visit it, the golden-winged rock continued. Six Desires Heaven. Yi Futian murmured. He was not yet familiar with the setup of the worlds in the Western world, and he needed time to investigate. However, this golden-winged rock did state the exact location of this divine mountain. More importantly, if a divine bird at the peak of the Demon Emperor realm actually existed on this divine mountain, there might be other even stronger characters there, like those who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. Their exact realm would be unknown. It would not be advisable to proceed with Est. There is no need. We have just arrived in Six Desires Heaven for the first time and will visit the lower worlds for now. We will visit the divine mountain later. Yi Futian responded with a faint smile. He declined the offer outright. He had no interest in engaging in false entreaties with the other and turned down the invitation. He found no reason to step into someone else's territory so soon. When his suggestion was rejected by Yi Futian, a chilling expression flashed through the eyes of the golden-winged rock. It was as sharp as could be. His wings opened wide to cover this corner of the sky, and those golden divine wings casually flapped a couple of times. Nonetheless, wisps of stinging aura seemed to cut through the void, lacerating the bodies of Futian and the others. Futian and his group were shrouded in a golden light screen while the wings of the golden-winged roc beat vigorously. In an instant, countless golden feathers rained down, cutting across the space. Each and every one of those golden feathers seemed to be the sharpest blade, aiming to kill Futian and his people. Blind Tai raised his head slightly as the golden divine light was shining all over his body. However, at this time, Chen Yi unleashed an endless light from his body. When the light collided with the feathers that slashed toward them, the feathers were unable to chop all the way through. They dissipated under the light instead. Futian took a look at Chen Yi. After Chen Yi inherited the light, his cultivation level did not change, as he was still a Renhuang in the 8th realm. However, his power had morphed, and he was able to block the attack from the other using the power of light he had inherited. "What should we do?" Chen Yi whispered, clearly asking Futian for instruction. It seemed he had no doubts about his ability to overpower this divine bird, something as simple as asking this question, which demonstrated the confidence Chen Yi now felt. In the world of cultivation, reaching the level of Renhuang meant that a transformation had taken place and the once mortal form had been shed. Although the divine bird was born with its natural ability, it had no particular advantage to speak of. Furthermore, Chen Yi now possessed the illumining body of the Great Path. "Keep control over him, but don't take his life," Futian replied without any intention of refusing Chen Yi's offer to counterstrike. He knew Chen Yi wanted to honor his promise and repay him. This was what blind Chen wanted. After he had inherited the light, Chen Yi would stay by Futian's side, assisting him. Done. Chen Yi's body floated in the air, the light shining brightly. All the feathers were destroyed and disappeared under the light. The golden eyes of the golden-winged roc were as cold as a blade as he assessed Chen Yi. This one turned out to be a Renhuang of the 8th realm and an expert in the rare power of the light. Buzz. A golden storm now raged between heaven and earth as the divine wings of the golden-winged roc slashed down. The wings magnified instantly as they split the void, aiming towards Chen Yi, who was floating in the air. The speed of the golden-winged roc was unimaginably fast, whether on the move or during an attack. The divine wings sliced down instantaneously, leaving a golden trace in the space, which blasted on Chen Yi's body, but it turned out to be only an afterimage. A smear of light appeared in the void, approaching the golden-winged roc. It was the speed of light. Buzz. A gale raged. The golden-winged roc flapped its wings and disappeared right where he was, but the light pursued him relentlessly and with great speed. The two left nothing of their movements but shadows trailing behind them in the void, which was hard to detect by the naked eye. The golden-winged roc was known to be unparalleled in speed. One could only imagine how fast he might be. However, today he encountered Chen Yi, who was an expert at the power of light. He was even faster than him. Knowing that he could not be any faster than Chen Yi, the wings of the divine bird slapped together as countless golden sharp blades attempted to shatter the space inside. It was as a last-ditch effort to end Chen Yi right here, right now. But at this moment, his eyes saw the light. And in an instant, his eyes felt a sharp pain. It was as if they were being stabbed. It seemed that the power of the light had directly invaded his soul. In an instant, the golden-winged roc closed its eyes and dared not open them again. Numerous rays of light shone on his massive body now and pierced into his flesh. The golden-winged roc made a screeching and sustained howling as if he was in extreme pain. At this moment, another figure appeared in front of him and commanded, "Open your eyes." This voice seemed to contain a demonic power as the golden-winged roc couldn't help but open his eyes. Then, he saw a pair of penetrating and terrifying wicked eyes invading inside of him, and a frightening spiritual will invaded his mind and proceeded to control him. Chapter 24-29, Great Elder Mortian. The golden-winged giant pengbird stood amidst the golden clouds. The arrogance and the hostility in his eyes gradually dissipated. The beast had been tamed. He lowered his head and pledged his loyalty to Futian, greeting him as master. The demonic light that flashed in Futian's eyes slowly disappeared. He cast an indifferent glance at the golden-winged giant pengbird. Then, his mind received the memory of the beast. This golden-winged giant pengbird was named Mo Yunzi. The divine mountain before them was indeed a famous spot in the Six Desires heaven. It was Mortian Mountain. It was founded by Great Elder Mortian, who was the lord of Mortian Palace. Since this golden-winged giant pengbird was the mount of Great Elder Mortian, he was named Mo Yunzi. Great Elder Mortian had been aiding Mo Yunzi in his cultivation. This caused his cultivation to improve until he reached the peak of the Demon Emperor plane, making him a formidable opponent for many cultivators. Who dares to act so presumptuously? A cold voice sounded from the divine mountain in the distance. Then, the color of the sky changed. Golden clouds churned and thundered, accompanied by a sprinkle of golden light. A group of cultivators traveled to where Futian and his group were at an astonishing speed. When the former approached Futian and his group, they immediately surrounded them. The cultivators were all powerful Renhuangs. Based on the intel Futian obtained from the memory of Mo Yunzi, Great Elder Mortian was a very famous figure in the Six Desires heaven. He was ranked among the top figures of the realm. Mortian Mountain, where Great Elder Mortian cultivated, was naturally a terrifying force as well. It was the #1 force in the Six Desires heaven. The group of cultivators who arrived had frightening auras. Their might of the Great Path loomed over the sky, enclosing Futian and his group within it. In the distance, a terrifying aura intensified. A golden face appeared among the golden clouds. The face was none other than that of Great Elder Mortian, the former master of Mo Yunzi. Brute, cursed Great Elder Mortian as he swept a glance at Mo Yunzi. Clearly, he knew that Mo Yunzi had betrayed him. He had no idea what Futian had done to Mo Yunzi. The latter actually managed to seize control of the beast. This is our first time here. We don't want to disturb Senior's meditation, nor do we want to get into a fight with the cultivators of Mortian Mountain. We hope Senior will forgive our intrusion. I can release my control over Mo Yunzi, Futian said loudly. The golden face in the sky showed no change in facial expression. It looked stern and distant. Great Elder Mortian thought to himself, this youth actually had the power to control demonic beasts. He was very overbearing. The other person in their group was proficient in the way of light. Based on Great Elder Mortian's vast knowledge and experience, he knew for sure that there was more to this group than met the eye. The crucial point was that this group of people actually dared to attack Mo Yunzi right outside of Mortian Mountain. Since they could seize control of Mo Yunzi directly, they would certainly have other trump cards up their sleeves. They were not as simple as they appeared to be. "Are you cultivators from the Divine Prefecture?" asked Great Elder Mortian nonchalantly. If they had not relied on the help of Donghuang Imperial Palace, it was not an easy task for them to traverse the vast void to come to the Western world from the Divine Prefecture. Very few people would take the initiative to traverse the vast void to explore other worlds. Those who did so were all very powerful cultivators. Besides that, the cultivators needed to have strong determination and tough character to do so. After all, the Divine Prefecture and all the other worlds were borderless in essence. Countless fateful encounters awaited those who were bold. Normally, unless one desired to experience the cultures of different worlds, they did not need to travel to other worlds just for cultivation. "Yes, we are," Futian replied while nodding. "Why did you come to the Western world?" Great Elder Mortian asked. "We're here for trials," Futian responded. The gigantic face of Great Elder Mortian stared at him. Obviously, he didn't believe Futian's words completely. There were most likely other reasons which brought Futian and his group here. Anyone who comes from afar is a guest. "Since that's the case, let go of him and follow me to Mortian Palace," said Great Elder Mortian. He turned around and seemed to be leaving. However, as the golden clouds churned and roared, an intense sense of danger suddenly welled up in Futian. "Be on your guard." Chen Yi, who was beside Futian, felt the danger too. As soon as he uttered his warning, a beam of light flashed past at an astonishing speed. The instant the light shone, a gigantic golden palm grabbed the space where Futian and his group were standing a second ago. The terrifying might of the palm crushed the space. This attack came from Great Elder Mortian, who hid amidst the golden clouds. The beam of light retracted, disappearing into the distance. Its speed was amazing. Futian swept a glance at where Great Elder Mortian was located. Great Elder Mortian was a figure that had experienced the first divine tribulation of the Great Path a few hundred years ago. According to the memory of Mo Yunzi, he was currently in seclusion, preparing to face the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. In other words, he was already at the peak of the first tribulation plane. Such a mighty figure actually attempted to kill them while they were distracted. Great Elder Mortian was indeed someone who did not stand on trifles or principles. Based on his action just now, Futian could tell that Great Elder Mortian was ruthless. He would stoop so low as to launch a sneak attack on juniors who had lower cultivation planes than him. I bear good intentions and have invited everyone over to my palace to be my guests. Where are you going? A voice sounded from the sky. Then, golden clouds churned and thundered, covering the sun. The clouds enveloped the endless space. The entire sky transformed into an enormous face. It was the face of Great Elder Mortian. The entire world seemed to have become Great Elder Mortian's domain of the Great Path. Futian and his group had nowhere to run or hide. Many pairs of golden eyes appeared in the sky. When Futian looked at the eyes, he could sense a menacing devouring power acting upon him. Futian's eyebrows furrowed. This Great Elder Mortian was so cautious. First, he launched a sneak attack on them. Then, he besieged them with his domain of the Great Path. Up until now, they had yet to meet him in person. It was rare for someone to be so vigilant when faced with people at lower cultivation planes. Suddenly, an alarming devouring power pressed downwards. The eyes transformed into terrifying whirlpools, which consumed their auras of the Great Path. When the whirlpools swept past Futian and the others, they felt incredibly miserable. It was as though the power of the Great Path inside their bodies was being sucked dry. Moreover, the whirlpools seemed to be capable of drawing out and devouring even their spiritual souls. Futian's power of the Great Path shielded the few people around him. The divine corpse of Shunjia the Great Emperor appeared in front of him. At the same time, his spiritual soul left his body and intended to surge into the divine corpse. However, the moment his spiritual soul left his flesh, the countless pairs of eyes unleashed frightening devouring power, attempting to suck his spiritual soul away. Rumble. Hua Jiyu joined the fight. A menacing will formed a barrier around Futian, blocking off the devouring power. This allowed Futian's spiritual soul to enter the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor smoothly. Shunjia the Great Emperor slowly opened his eyes. A terrifying aura burst forth from him. Futian scanned the domain of the Great Path, which loomed over them with an indifferent gaze. This frightening devouring power nearly swallowed his spiritual soul, hindering him from entering the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. All the eyes embedded in the sky stared at Futian. A voice reverberated, "You own the flesh of a great emperor. Who are you?" Great Elder Mortian naturally realized that Futian was extraordinary. As expected, his wariness was founded. He couldn't help but be cautious of cultivators who came from other worlds. After all, anything was possible. This person before him possessed the divine body of a great emperor. Futian would most likely pose a threat to him. Chapter 2430. Everyone has their own agenda. The devouring power of the countless eyes in Great Elder Mortian's domain of the Great Path became more frightening. The power enveloped Futian and the others. Hua Jiyu and Blind Tai were protecting Hua Qingqing, Fang Kun, and the others. However, as the devouring power intensified, even Hua Jiyu found it hard to withstand its pressure. Their bodies were actually sucked up into the sky. The terrifying devouring light of the Great Path swept towards their bodies, attempting to engulf them. However, right at this moment, a menacing aura burst forth from Futian's divine body. His Great Path rumbled, and he activated his divine power. His power contained an alarming might that could destroy all great paths. Futian shifted his will, and instantly, countless swords appeared in the heavens and the earth. The swords buzzed and were covered with a layer of divine light. They were formed from sword runes. Go. Yi Futian swept a glance at the sky above. In an instant, countless divine swords burst forth. They seemed to ignore the distance and landed on the domain of the great path in the blink of an eye. Bang! 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 The pairs of eyes exploded and turned into dust. The sword will immediately pierced through them and caused them to be eliminated at a frenzied pace. Yi Futian did not even need to attack them physically. After Yi Futian cultivated in seclusion for decades in the starry cultivation court, his current attainment in swordsmanship could not be compared to that of before. He managed to merge all sorts of divine techniques with different law powers. He even had much more refined control over the flesh of Xinjia the Great Emperor. All these improvements allowed him to directly kill a cultivator who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path before this. Right now, the swordsmanship that Yi Futian was using was Avici, an art of supreme attack he once created. However, the current Avici was much stronger than before. It was activated with a mere thought, and it could instantly slash down on its target, disregarding the distance between Yi Futian and his opponent. Everywhere Yi Futian's will covered, the sword could be mobilized in an instant, and its might remained equally amazing regardless of the distance it traveled. Right then, Yi Futian activated the divine power of Xinjia the Great Emperor. The power of Avici was terrifying. In the span of a single thought, it collided with the countless eyes within the domain of the Great Path and reduced them to dust. This caused the domain of the Great Path to tremble violently. After his swords burst forth, Yi Futian did not stop. Even more sword will coalesced and appeared endlessly. The sword will frenziedly shot up into the sky. Terrifying rumbling sounds could be heard. No matter how many pairs of eyes there were, they were all destroyed. It was difficult for the domain of the Great Path to remain stable, and it collapsed and shattered. The world returned to normal. However, the silhouette of Great Elder Mortian did not appear. On the golden cloud in the sky, there was only his illusory face that was staring at Yi Futian. Charge! Yi Futian raised his head and swept a glance at that illusory face. A divine sword shot up into the sky and immediately pierced through the cloud, destroying it. The sword then continued advancing, traversing the space and actually heading off far into the distance. Many people turned to look at the divine mountain behind them. In that direction, a golden image of a sword appeared in the sky. It penetrated the space, leaving behind an extremely sharp aura of the Great Path. "It is charging towards Mortian Palace," uttered the Renhuangs of Mortian Palace as their expressions changed. This white-haired youth was relying on the figure of the Great Emperor to launch his attack. He actually released a sword from a distance. After destroying the domain of the Great Path, the divine sword was flying towards Mortian Palace. That was where Great Elder Mortian was cultivating. Clearly, Yi Futian was aware that Great Elder Mortian had not revealed his actual self to him. Instead, Great Elder Mortian attacked him from a distance. He had set up a domain of the Great Path far away from Mortian Palace to test Yi Futian. As one of the cultivators who stood at the peak of the Six Desires Heaven, Great Elder Mortian was vigilant. Furthermore, his ability was extremely domineering. Yi Futian could sense that he was far more powerful than the tribulation-level cultivator whom Yi Futian had killed before this. In the distance where the divine mountain was, the sound of an explosion rang. The cultivators could detect that even the divine mountain shook slightly. Many buildings were flattened due to the explosion. Moreover, an extremely powerful aura burst forth. It was the aura of Great Elder Mortian. Clearly, he personally blocked off the sword which was sent from here. Otherwise, the sword would have destroyed Mortian Palace. Yet another astonishing sword will radiated from the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. A beam of frightening sword light shot up to the clouds. The sword will alone was enough to split the golden clouds. Its might was menacing. "Little friend, please cease your attacks." A voice echoed from Mortian Palace, which was a distance away. Great Elder Mortian had spoken. He said to Yi Futian, "What happened today is all a misunderstanding. This brute attacked you on his own accord. It is appropriate for you to punish him. I will let you decide what to do with him. I will not interfere with your decision." The cultivators of Mortian Palace were slightly astonished when they heard the words of Great Elder Mortian. Both of them had already begun battling, yet the palace lord actually wanted to make peace and end the fight. It was apparent that Yi Futian was powerful. He obviously posed a threat to the palace lord for him to want to cease fighting. Otherwise, with their understanding of Great Elder Mortian, he would have immediately taken Yi Futian down and seized the divine body of the great emperor from Yi Futian. He would not have let it go so easily. The only reason why Great Elder Mortian might make peace was that he had no confidence in taking down his opponent. He believed that he might even lose. That white-haired youth could actually unleash such powerful combat ability with the divine body. When Yi Futian heard the other party's words, he hesitated for a moment. He was having doubts as to whether he should continue fighting. Of course, he did not believe Great Elder Mortian's words. Great Elder Mortian was cautious to the point that he could be considered cunning. Before this, he had actually made Yi Futian lower his guard with his words and then suddenly attacked Yi Futian. This was the first time Yi Futian had seen such a powerful figure act so careful and despicable. Such a person was very dangerous, and one could not lower their guard around them. How could Yi Futian trust him? Moreover, from Mo Yunzi's memories, Yi Futian also knew about the character of Great Elder Mortian. It could be said that Mo Yunzi directly attacking Yi Futian to pillage him was also due to the influence of Great Elder Mortian. None of the members of Mortian Palace were good people. The cultivators of Mortian Palace did not conceal their desires at all. Aside from them, many other cultivators from the Six Desires Heaven behaved so too. Yi Futian was somewhat surprised by this discovery. He was well aware that even though this world was named the world of Buddhism, it was impossible for everyone here to adhere to the teachings of Buddha. However, he was still taken aback by the demeanors of the cultivators of the Six Desires Heaven. This was just the first location that Yi Futian had arrived at in this world. All right. I was originally only defending myself as well. Since you put it that way, I will naturally stop. Please excuse any offense I have committed today. I should head over to offer my humble apologies, said Yi Futian as he advanced. He seemed to be heading towards Mortian Palace. His tone was sincere, and he was exceptionally polite. Little friend, you need not act so politely, replied Great Elder Mortian. I am fine. Little friend, you should take care of your friends instead. There is no need to pay me a visit. As they conversed, Yi Futian and Great Elder Mortian were aware that both parties had their own agenda. Obviously, Great Elder Mortian knew that Yi Futian wanted to attack him by getting closer to him. Hence, he threatened Yi Futian by bringing up the others. After all, even though they were far apart, Great Elder Mortian's attack could easily traverse the space and land on Yi Futian's group. This was similar to Yi Futian being able to attack Mortian Palace from where he was now. Yi Futian stopped in his tracks. He then smiled and said, "If that is the case, I will take my leave." "Little friend, farewell," replied Great Elder Mortian. The two of them sounded like old friends having a chat. Chapter 2431, Battle of Brain and Brawn. Yi Futian turned and left. The group left the place in a flying boat with extreme speed. Great Elder Mortian was cunning and extremely cautious. If they threatened him with someone else and he decided to start a battle, the outcome would be tough to predict. To be safe, Yi Futian decided to give up and not make a move against him. After they left, on Mortian Palace of Mortian Mountain stood a middle-aged man in golden robes. His expression was very solemn. One figure after another landed around him and said, "Great Elder, do we just let them go?" Great Elder Mortian looked into the distance at the person leaving. That was the frame of a great emperor. Of course, he wouldn't let him go so easily. Yi Futian drove the flying boat as they traveled through the clouds. His spiritual soul was still inside the body of Xinjia the Great. Little Ling asked, "Master, why aren't you coming out?" "It's not time yet," Yi Futian answered. The flying boat's speed was astonishing, yet Yi Futian abruptly stopped the boat and let it levitate atop the misty clouds after a while. Xinjia the Great's brows locked tight together, and he said coldly, "Senior, what is the meaning of this?" Clearly, he sensed that Great Elder Mortian was following him from afar. If it wasn't for his sharp senses, he might not even realize that the Great Elder was behind. Great Elder Mortien had intentionally hidden his aura and followed from an extreme distance, yet he still sensed it. In the distance, it was still just Great Elder Mortien's face. His real body couldn't be seen and was hidden as always. The face realized that Yi Futian had found out, so it stopped camouflaging itself and released a very faint aura that prompted the clouds to roll and ripple. A face appeared above Yi Futian. Great Elder Mortien said, "I didn't have anything to do. Since our dear little friend came from so far away, I thought I could see you guys off. Thank you very much, Senior. Having Mo Yunzi see us off is more than enough. No need to trouble you," Yi Futian said. The golden-winged giant pengbird was already controlled, so he was naturally familiar with the Six Desires Heaven. He was cautious toward this Great Elder Mortien previously, which was why his spiritual soul remained inside the body of Shenjia the Great. Still, he didn't expect him to actually follow them. "No worries, I'm also a little curious. Your spiritual soul left your body to control the divine body of the Great Emperor. That puts a great burden on you, right? Don't you feel deep spiritual exhaustion? I thought this might not be good for you in the long run," Great Elder Mortien probed. He obviously understood the crucial part of this, which is why he followed him all the way here. The moment Yi Futian could no longer handle the exhaustion, how would these Renhuang-level cultivators be able to stop him? Previously, when Yi Futian attacked, he could feel path-obliterating power and sensed danger. He wasn't confident in starting a battle back then, so he decided to let Yi Futian leave. But as long as Yi Futian's spiritual soul returned to his own body, who would be able to stop him? This divine body would naturally become his. He wasn't in a hurry. To be safe, he was willing to wait until Yi Futian exhausted himself completely without doing anything else. Yi Futian was rather helpless as well. The opponent was far too cautious. It would be extremely difficult to eliminate him in an instant, and there would be huge backlash the moment he slipped up. After all, a full-force attack from a Tribulation Plane cultivator would be quite a problem for Jiyu and the others. But if he allowed this to continue, the dangers would become even greater. He couldn't keep going forever, and Great Elder Mortien was clearly a very patient person who wouldn't mind continuing to spend as much time as needed on him. "Well, Senior doesn't need to concern yourself with that." Yi Futian's voice turned cold, he seemed agitated. This emotion was, of course, captured by Great Elder Mortien. He snickered inside and didn't get anxious, continuing to wait for the right opportunity. "Let's go," Yi Futian said in a composed voice as he straightened his sleeves. The group started moving forward again. At the same time, Yi Futian started to analyze Great Elder Mortien using the golden-winged giant pengbird's memories. "If you want to attack, I'll try my best to block his strike," Hua Jiyu transmitted her voice to Yi Futian. She clearly understood that Great Elder Mortien was taking advantage of their weaker position to pin Yi Futian down. This would prevent him from committing fully to a battle with him. Otherwise, if Yi Futian had nothing else to worry about, he would fight him head-on. "All right, no rush. Let me think of a solution," Yi Futian replied. His brain ran like an engine as he thought about how to deal with Great Elder Mortien. As time passed, Yi Futian appeared to be more and more anxious, and the divine might of the Great Path started to erupt from him and embrace Hua Jiyu and the others within. Afterward, Shenjia the Great's body flew through the void and toward the back. Its speed was so great that it was as though it turned into a sword as it flew. Boom! A deafening noise erupted and sent tremors through the skies. Countless gold great palm seals were crushed and destroyed, and the divine frame traveled forward through the void. Right then, numerous golden eyes appeared in front of it as a terrifying devouring power descended upon them, attempting to reel in the divine frame. Shenjia the Great's body once again pierced through it and continued forward, striking the face projection, yet it still wasn't Great Elder Mortien's real body. From afar, several terrifying auras appeared. Yi Futian's eyes turned cold. He asked, "Senior, what do you really want?" His voice was laced with agitation as well as a tinge of anger. "You spiritual soul. Leave the divine frame of the Great Emperor and hand over the divine frame to me, and then I'll let you guys leave. After all, there are no major grudges between you and me," Great Elder Mortien said. Yi Futian pondered for a while. He appeared to be struggling internally. He then said, We're willing to return Senior's mount as well. Great Elder Mortien was silent for a while, and then he smiled and replied, I was planning to give it to you as a gift, but since you're this courteous, I suppose I can take it back. Yi Futian must be doing this because he was afraid that he wouldn't let them go, and of course, he would be willing to grant his wish. This divine frame is the body of Shunjia the Great from the ancient era. It's very difficult to control. Do be careful with it, Yi Futian reminded the Great Elder, which prompted a marveled expression to flash across the face projection in the void. He then said, I got it. I have just one more request. Can my friends leave first? Yi Futian asked. From afar, Great Elder Mortien was thinking. He said, I'm sure you are aware that if I continued to follow you, sooner or later, you wouldn't be able to handle it. If you're planning to play any tricks. Yet, in actual fact, Great Elder Mortien was sneering inside. So what if he let them go first? Did Yi Futian really think that he had no other way to track them? Every last one of them could forget about escaping. I understand, Yi Futian replied. In that case, let them leave first. Great Elder Mortien's voice sounded. Yi Futian nodded and said, you guys leave first. No. Hua Jiyu and the others appeared hesitant. Master, Fang Kun and the students called out as well. I'm not leaving, Little Ling said. Yi Futian didn't tell them about the plan, so these younger cultivators' responses were all out of genuine concern. How would they know that Yi Futian and Great Elder Mortien were both planning their own schemes, both trying to deceive each other? Chapter 2432, Schemed Kill. Although Tai Tu and Duo Yu didn't say anything, their attitude was clear, as they stood where they were. The Great Elder had agreed to the deal, and he will get the divine frame of the Great Emperor, so he wouldn't do anything to Master. Besides, doing anything to me wouldn't benefit him. You guys leave right now, Yi Futian said to them. Uncle Tai, bring them away. Okay, Blind Tai nodded, then a powerful force embraced the youngsters. Uncle Tai. Dad, the group called out. But Blind Tai ignored them and forcefully brought them away. Since Yi Futian had made the decision, he certainly had his own intentions and plans. After following Yi Futian for so many years, Blind Tai knew Yi Futian's personality quite well. He wasn't the type of person that would just hand over the body of Shunjia the Great so easily. With Yi Futian's personality, unless he was really at the end of the road, there was no way he would do such a thing. Right now, the situation seemed far from such a case, so clearly, Yi Futian had other plans. Be careful, Hua Jiyu looked toward Yi Futian and said. After that, she left with Hua Qingqing, Chen Yi, and the others, passing through the void at an extreme speed. They brought Yi Futian's mortal frame as well, but he was still in a standoff with Great Elder Mortien using Shunjia the Great's body. Of course, until now, Great Elder Motions had been hiding in the dark. After a while, Great Elder Mortien said, with their speed, they'll probably be far away by now. They had longed to escape the circumference of my divine consciousness. Is this good enough? Yi Futian looked to the front and said, Senior wouldn't get anything out of killing me. I trust that a cultivator on your level wouldn't go back on his word, right? Of course, I'm not the treacherous type, Great Elder Mortien said sincerely. Once I get the divine frame, I will have achieved my objective. Why would I want to take your life? All right, Yi Futian nodded. His expression was equally solemn. In that case, I'll hand over the divine frame to Senior. As the voice sounded, a spiritual soul left the body of the Shunjia the Great and started to float away into the distance. Shunjia the Great's divine frame levitated in the air, but there was no longer any vitality in it, though a powerful aura continued to seep out. A projection of Great Elder Mortien's face appeared, followed by an immense devouring power that swept towards the divine frame. Instantly, the divine frame started to fly into the distance. A pair of eyes appeared and looked toward the divine frame. In an instant, a muffled groan could be heard as the aura of the Great Path pulsed rigorously. So this is the divine frame of a great emperor, magnificent. A voice could be heard from Shunjia the Great's body. Far away, a faint silhouette was leaving. It was Yi Futian's figure transformed from his spiritual soul. As the voice sounded, a terrifying turbulent airflow surged toward Yi Futian's spiritual soul, and a bone-chilling golden swirl appeared atop him as well. Hum. As the terrifying spiritual soul attack started to engulf Yi Futian's spiritual soul, Yi Futian's spiritual soul started to struggle, using every last bit of its strength. Senior, you, Yi Futian gasped. His shock was answered by a laugh. My young friend, you have such great talent and potential. How could I be at ease if you didn't die? Rest assured, I won't be letting any of your friends off either. Right after Great Elder Mortian said that, a terrifying swirl completely devoured Yi Futian's projection. After obliterating his spiritual soul, a figure walked out from the tempest of the Great Path and stood before Shenjia the Great's divine frame. His gaze was immensely terrifying, and the air current of the Great Path surrounded his body. As he stared at the divine frame, it was as though he had entered into a different, fantasy-like world of his own, and his figure was encircled by countless runes. So this is the divine frame of a great emperor. Magnificent, Great Elder Mortian muttered. His eyes were closed, and he even appeared to be straining himself a little. Just as his eyes closed, a sign of life suddenly appeared in the eyes of Shenjia the Great, and an ice-cold intent to kill erupted from those eyes. Great Elder Mortian felt that something was not right. The next moment, it was as though Shenjia the Great's body turned into a divine sword, piercing through the void within an instant. It was too late for the Great Elder to dodge now. The sword which the divine frame had transformed into pierced right through his body and appeared behind him. Intense emotions of fear appeared in Great Elder Mortian's eyes. It was the fear of death. His body trembled as it gradually started to disintegrate. How did you do it? Great Elder Mortian asked. These were his last words. You were consumed by greed, otherwise, you would have been able to notice, Yi Futian answered. Great Elder Mortian came to a sudden realization, so that was why he felt that something wasn't quite right just now. It was no wonder. That spiritual soul was only a strand of Yi Futian's actual spiritual soul. Most of it was still inside the divine frame, it was just hidden. Because of his greed and how anxious he was to obtain the divine frame, he became careless and let down his guard. He never expected that after a whole life of being cautious, in the end, he fell into the trap of such a young cultivator and had been killed by a single hit. Bang! Great Elder Mortian's body exploded into fragments. He was killed by such a sudden attack that he couldn't even unleash his full power. When a cultivator was on his level, there was only a thin line between life and death. Yi Futian heaved a sigh of relief after killing Great Elder Mortian. His figure flashed and shot off with great velocity in a direction. Soon, he met up with the others. His spiritual soul came out from the divine frame and returned to his mortal body. Master, Little Ling and the others called out to Yi Futian, only to see him sit cross-legged on the back of the golden-winged great peng bird. He was closing his eyes and entering cultivation. As his worldly ancient tree of the soul started to operate, Yi Futian's aura fluctuated. It seemed that he had sustained some injuries. Don't disturb him, Blind Tai said. They had been attacked by Great Elder Mortian just now as well, and this instance showed that the Great Elder also had unique attacks. He disappeared after a while. They knew that it was likely because the real Great Elder Mortian had been killed by Yi Futian. However, Yi Futian seemed to be injured. Little Ling and the others realized what was happening and didn't disturb Yi Futian. At the same time, the golden-winged great peng bird that Yi Futian was sitting on quivered. He also knew that Great Elder Mortian was dead, and he was fully aware of how terrifyingly powerful his former master was. Not only was his cultivation level high, but he was also cunning and ruthless. Throughout the years, countless powerful cultivators had died at his hands. Yet now, with almost absolute certainty and control over the situation, he was killed by a cultivator of the younger generation. This new master of his was a hellishly talented prodigy. Everything that he did previously was to get Great Elder Mortian to let down his guard so that he could kill him with a single strike. He had read the Great Elder like a book. And he was so young. How terrifying would he be in the future? Yi Futian also paid quite a hefty price to kill Great Elder Mortian. After all, he had separated a fraction of his spiritual soul and let the Great Elder devour and destroy it to make him let down his guard. Only then could he bait out his real self and kill Great Elder Mortian with one strike. That separated spiritual soul being destroyed actually did quite a bit of damage to Yi Futian. It would require a period of time to heal. Chapter 2433, Lord Six Desires. There was a divine mountain in Six Desires heaven. It was located at its highest point. This divine mountain was constantly surrounded by ethereal mist, just like a celestial residence. On the divine mountain, there were many celestial mansions. Among them, the one located in the highest place was bathing in divine light, encircled by an ethereal aura. In those mansions and palaces, many superb celestial figures were covered in divine light. There were also many stunning beauties whose glamour could not be described with words alone. Here was the most powerful holy land in Six Desires heaven, the Six Desires heavenly palace. And inside Six Desires heavenly palace resided the most powerful cultivator of all Six Desires heaven, and that was the palace lord of Six Desires heavenly palace, Lord Six Desires. At this time, in the mist within the Six Desires heavenly place was the sound of music. Between the clouds and mist, many thinly clad women danced gracefully. They wore white veils over their faces and dressed in long white dresses. One could tell that those veiled faces were exceptionally gorgeous. More importantly, none of them were weak in cultivation. In the heavenly palace high above, goddesses were dancing. "All of you get out." But at this moment, a voice broke the silence. It sounded rather harsh. In an instant, the music stopped, and the women bowed and withdrew, leaving quickly. The powerful figures stood on both sides of the hall. They looked at the master of the heavenly palace, who was perched above the stairs, and all of them were quite puzzled by the sudden change in mood. The palace lord of Six Desires heavenly palace wore a frown. A strange look flashed through his eyes. Someone below bowed and ventured, "My lord, did something happen?" Lord Six Desires glanced at the speaker, and a divine light shot out from his brow chakra. Immediately, an image appeared in front of him. "Watch for yourselves," Lord Six Desire said. Everyone's attention was drawn by the moving imagery instantly. It seemed to depict an ongoing battle, the duration of which was extremely brief. The battle ended in a moment's time with the demise of one of the two combatants. However, the imagery shocked many who had gathered around, and their faces changed. They all knew the one who had fallen in the battle. It was the master of Mortian Mountain, the Great Elder Mortian. Someone had slain him. It turned out that this image depicted the exact battle between Yi Futian and the Great Elder Mortian, which was also Great Elder Mortian's last moment. "What is that?" Everyone present stared at Yi Futian and wondered. "The divine body." "It was probably the divine body of a great emperor," someone replied, causing the eyes of other cultivators to sharpen a bit. Could it really have been the divine body of a great emperor? Their eyes turned to Lord Six Desires just in time to hear his reply. "This was transmitted to me before Mortian perished to let me know how he died. This white-haired man possesses no high cultivation, but he can use the divine body of the great emperor, and that's how he killed Mortian. Mortian wanted the Lord to avenge him," someone said. In Six Desires heaven, Lord Six Desires was its most supreme figure. Great Elder Mortian and the others were frequent visitors here. Obviously, he had left something in this place so that he was able to transmit his last moments to Lord Six Desires. With this divine body, Lord Six Desires would definitely make strike back. Lord Six Desires waved his hand, and suddenly rays of light shone upon his body. Instantly, many images appeared below. There were quite a few people who appeared, and all of them had an extraordinary temperament. "Greetings, my lord." Everyone that appeared saluted Lord Six Desires. "Look at this." Lord Six Desires showed them the scene where Mortian had been killed. After watching, everyone in the group looked astounded and alarmed. They heard Lord Six Desires say, "He is still in Six Desires heaven. Sai Yi, he is in your territory at the moment. Find him and don't let him slip away." "Yes, my lord." In one of the images, a woman nodded in response. "Be careful. Only detain him. This man used the divine body to get close enough to kill Mortian, so don't let him get close to you," Lord Six Desires reminded her. "Understood," Sai Yi nodded. "Go now." Lord Six Desires waved his hand, and suddenly those images disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. In Six Desires Heaven, Lord Six Desires also stood up. Everyone followed suit. All of them were disturbed deep in their hearts. They never expected that so many top cultivators in Six Desires Heaven would work together because of a white-haired youngster. A situation like this had not happened in many years. Futian didn't know anything of what was just described. He had never considered the possibility that the great Elder Mortian had set a trap for him right before he died, leaving him one more chance to take down him even in death. They came to a city upon the mountain. It was very spacious, and there were many powerful cultivators. Futian settled here in order to recover from his injuries. An ethereal air lingered in an inn on the mountain as Futian sat by the cliff in cultivation. Wisps of aura encircled his body, and the life force continued to nourish his spiritual soul. He seemed to be gradually recovering. Many cultivators were drinking and chatting at the inn. Blind Tai and Fang Kun were also there. Hua Jiyu and Hua Qingqing were on the other side with Futian. There are so many mountains here, Fang Kun remarked. Since they entered Six Desires Heaven, they had discovered many mountainous locations for cultivation. It seemed as if everyone in this world was fond of building cities on mountains for cultivation purposes. Mo Yunzi, the golden-winged rock, had turned into his human form. He glanced at Fang Kun and said, "The premier places for cultivation in this world are all on top of these mountains." Fang Kun nodded. This was probably the characteristic of the Western world. At this juncture, a celestial atmosphere permeated from a distance. Many cultivators looked yonder and saw a group of goddess-like figures in white come through the void. All of them were stunning beauties clad in thin white dresses. They were most provocative with their movements. They had attracted everyone's attention in an instant. The onlookers found it difficult to take their eyes off of these ladies. It's them. The surrounding cultivators' attention focused on the women who arrived. These women looked at these cultivators in return as their divine consciousness spread out and shrouded the mountain. Mo Yunzi's eyes turned sharp. He had morphed into his human shape and soon learned of the identity of these people. Buzz. They continued walking towards the cliff. At this moment, Futian opened his eyes and looked above the sky. The golden-winged rock had already secretly informed him via voice transmission, so Futian was forewarned of these people's identities. His brows knitted together tightly. After arriving at Six Desires Heaven, Mortian Palace was certainly an unintended accident. But after having killed the great Elder Mortian, what did the other top figures want with him? If this was a coincidence, his luck was a little too unusual. Clearly, this was unlikely to be a coincidence. The other party had come here for him. At this moment, a celestial light descended from above the void, and all the cultivators on the mountain looked and saw a woman. Many of them bowed and saluted her. Obviously, they recognized who she was. The woman who had arrived was none other than Sai Yi, but it was only a phantom. She lowered her head to glance at Futian's location. Futian also looked up at her and asked, "Was Elder looking for me? My lord has asked for you and would be pleased with your presence at Six Desires Heaven." Sai Yi lowered her head and replied to Futian. "Lord Six Desires." Futian already knew some information regarding Six Desires Heaven. He knew who she was referring to, the most powerful cultivator in Six Desires Heaven. Chapter 2434, The Invitation. Futian didn't expect things to become so much more complicated. Now, even Lord Six Desires, the most powerful man of Six Desires Heaven, was intervening. He didn't even know how Lord Six Desires could possibly know about what had just happened. Obviously, the death of the great Elder Mortian was why he had dispatched someone to bring him to Six Desires' heavenly palace. Sai Yi was an existence who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. Her presence here could only mean that the confrontation with the great Elder Mortian had rippled through the entire Six Desires Heaven, especially amongst the peak cultivators in its upper echelon. Futian could have never imagined that right after he arrived in the Western world, he would be embroiled in disturbance of this degree in Six Desires Heaven. "Jiyu, Uncle Tai, I will go with them, but you guys should leave," Yi Futian said to Hua Jiyu and Blind Tai via voice transmission. Uncle Tai can take the others and leave, Hua Jiyu responded to Yi Futian via voice transmission. She did not intend to leave. I'm concerned. I will shadow you in secret. Very well. Yi Futian didn't bother to insist. He and Hua Jiyu shared one mind and soul. He understood it was impossible for Hua Jiyu to leave him behind at this time, so he could only accept what she had decided to do. The matter had escalated now. The presence of Blind Tai and the others would only become a burden, so he felt it was best to go by himself. Blind Tai understood Yi Futian's intention very well and agreed without saying much. Although he had cultivated to the peak of Renhuang, he was still a little helpless when participating in battles that involved cultivators who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. Only Yi Futian could battle such characters by using the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. Once he settled things, Yi Futian looked up at Sai Yi's phantom and replied, "How could I refuse an invitation from Lord Six Desires himself? Elder, please lead the way." Sai Yi seemed a little surprised. She did not expect this young man in white, who had killed the great Elder Mortian, would be so amicable. She did not appear in person precisely because she was worried that she would end up like the great Elder Mortian. She was a little wary of Yi Futian because of what she saw of great Elder Mortian's last moments. "Very good. Let us depart, then," Sai Yi's phantom replied. Immediately, those women in white turned around. Their figures drifted in the air as they were moving away. Yi Futian's figure flickered as he proceeded to follow them. "Teacher." Fang Kun and Little Ling both had worry and anger in their eyes. They were worried because they were afraid that something would happen to Yi Futian. They had anger because they had already encountered danger several times since they had arrived. Why couldn't these people just leave them alone? Duo Yu clenched his fists tightly as if he resented his own lack of strength. The event before them had left some impressions on the four youngsters. It made them more eager than ever to become more powerful. On the contrary, Chen Yi appeared quite calm. Although he hadn't known Yi Futian for very long, he had his own shares of crises. Yi Futian held many cards to his chest, and he had gone through a lot before and always emerged unscathed. Chen Yi was convinced that nothing would happen to Yi Futian this time either. Blind Chen had once said that Yi Futian was a man of destiny. Chen Yi did not quite understand what exactly destiny meant in this instance, but there was no need for him to understand it. He only knew that Blind Chen told him that he was meant to be the heir of the light, born to be exceptional, and destined to inherit the light. And as the person who was destined to inherit the light, Blind Chen also told him to follow Yi Futian and serve him. This request demonstrated the high esteem to which Blind Chen held Yi Futian. Because Chen Yi believed in Blind Chen, therefore he also trusted Yi Futian. "We will go now," Chen Yi replied. Although they were of no help to Yi Futian, they should avoid being a burden to him. At least, they should ensure their own safety first so that Yi Futian could deal with the situation at hand without any worries. "Yes." Blind Tai nodded, and the group set off right away to leave, but in a different direction from the one Yi Futian was about to take. On the journey, Sai Yi still did not reveal her true shape, but Yi Futian could feel that she had been there all along. He was keenly aware of someone observing everything that was happening all this time. "I have something I don't understand. May I ask Elder to elucidate?" asked Yi Futian. "Go ahead," said a voice in response to Yi Futian. Elder's mission must have been commanded by Lord Six Desires, but how did Lord Six Desires know what happened in the first place? Yi Futian continued. Great Elder Mortian had sent an image to Lord Six Desires right before he died, the woman responded. Yi Futian's eyes sharpened as he heard this. He did not expect that cautious and cunning old fox would be plotting against him even as he died. He had informed Lord Six Desires of this sordid affair. More importantly, he had revealed Yi Futian as the one who killed him. No wonder how did Elder know of my location? Yi Futian queried again. That you don't need to know, Sai Yi responded. If you are really curious, you can ask Lord Six Desires yourself when you get to the Six Desires Heavenly Palace. When Yi Futian heard the other's answer, he immediately realized that it was probably because she did not want him to know. However, If the great elder Mortian could manage to transmit the last moment of his demise to Lord Six Desires, he might have managed to leave a mark on him without his being aware of it. Ultimately, the realm of great elder Mortian was much more powerful than him. Other than that, he couldn't really think of any other possibilities. After all, once he arrived in Six Desires Heaven, great elder Mortian was the only one he had an altercation with. After slaying his opponent, he did not have contact with anyone else. They themselves were practically unknowns in this place. Therefore, great elder Mortian was still the key to all that had happened, but he had no idea what it was that made him so disagreeable to these people here. Therefore, it seemed that no matter where he went, he may not escape the eyes of Lord Six Desires. If this matter were to be resolved, it was impossible for him to avoid going to Six Desires' heavenly palace. But, even Yi Futian had no clue what the outcome might be when he faced a cultivator who had survived a second divine tribulation of the Great Path. Time passed, and the group had traversed the endless distance. They finally came to the top of a divine mountain. This divine mountain stood tall above the sky, suspended in the firmament, bordering the heavens. It was, in fact, the highest point of Six Desires Heaven. The Six Desires Heavenly Palace was rumored to be the highest point of Six Desires Heaven. At this moment, Yi Futian set foot on the divine mountain with Sai Yi. Not far in front of him, a beautiful woman with extraordinary temperament was leading the way. It was Sai Yi, the top cultivator of Six Desires Heaven. She was now in her true shape as they neared this location. She knew that Yi Futian could not easily escape and that he meant to follow through and had come here on his own accord. Many people appeared, and they were swarmed by many divine consciousnesses as these emerging individuals tried to spy on Yi Futian. This white-haired young man in the 8th realm of cultivation had managed to kill great elder Mortian. Furthermore, he controlled a divine body, which was precisely the reason why he was able to obliterate a cultivator who had survived the divine tribulation with a single blow. Sai Yi took Yi Futian all the way upward and into the depths of the divine mountain. The Six Desires Heavenly Palace was now in his field of vision. When he saw that magnificent heavenly palace, Yi Futian was nonplussed, as his expression remained calm, and as usual, not showing much surprise. Sai Yi, on the other hand, was amazed by his composure. This young man had come all this way without the slightest reaction. Could he really be this sturdy? Chapter 2435, Shameless. Up in the Six Desires Heavenly Palace, a deity-like silhouette sat cross-legged. On both sides of the stairway, there stood many cultivators. They were all extraordinary figures, and many of them were top-level renhuangs. Today, not just the cultivators of the Six Desires Heavenly Palace were present. The cultivators of other forces of Six Desires Heaven were also here. Right then, the various cultivators were looking far into the distance. Sai Yi brought over a white-haired youth. When he reached the bottom of the stairway, Sai Yi bowed towards the silhouette on top of the heavenly palace and said, "Lord, I have brought the person you wanted." "Thank you for your efforts," replied Lord Six Desires as he nodded his head. He sat on a golden futon cushion. Golden divine light also circled around him. He appeared divine and actually gave off a harmonious aura. The Six Desires Heavenly Palace was also like a true heavenly palace. It was covered in golden light everywhere. It faintly resembled a Buddhist holy land. Sai Yi stepped back to one side. Immediately, the gazes of the various cultivators landed on Yi Futian. Their looks were full of curiosity. This junior youth was the one who killed great elder Mortian, an existence at the peak of Six Desires Heaven. Lord Six Desires similarly sized up Yi Futian. Yi Futian bowed slightly at Lord Six Desires and greeted, "Lord Six Desires." Lord Six Desires responded as he nodded at Yi Futian. He then said, "Yi Futian, why aren't you cultivating in the original realm? Why have you come to the Western world?" When Yi Futian heard the other party's words, he revealed a strange look. This Lord Six Desires actually knew his identity. As expected, these giant-level figures were well informed. Amidst the storm of events in the original realm, only the Western world was nowhere to be seen. This might be related to them practicing Buddhism. However, That did not mean that the Western world did not pay heed to the events in the original realm. When Lord Six Desires asked him this, Yi Futian understood that the other party knew about the happenings in the original realm these past years. Otherwise, he would not have recognized Yi Futian. Yi Futian said politely, "Since Lord Six Desires knows what has happened in the original realm, you must certainly know about what I have faced there. Due to that, I decided to come and train. For me, the Western world is an unknown land, and I also have no enemies here. That is why I chose to come here. However, I never imagined that I would be attacked by Great Elder Mortian. I was forced to defend myself. I hope you may forgive my offense." His tone was still calm. Since Lord Six Desires knew of Yi Futian's existence, how would he deal with Yi Futian? When he heard Yi Futian's explanation, Lord Six Desires nodded his head. He seemed to agree with what Yi Futian said. He then said, "I already know everything about the incident with Mortian. Such things happen in the cultivation world. You naturally did not do anything wrong. Mortian can only blame his lack of ability compared to you." As he said this, he introduced Yi Futian to the other cultivators. Some of you may have heard about him, but most of you still do not know who he is. It turns out that he is the top monstrous figure, Yi Futian, who was once known as the ruler of the original realm. He discovered the teachings of several great emperors and inherited the world of Great Emperor Ziwei. He unified the various forces of the original realm but offended the major forces of the divine prefecture instead. Even Donghuang Imperial Palace came after him. Is what I said correct? I am honored to have garnered the attention of Lord Six Desires, said Yi Futian. Lord Six Desires continued, "You provoked the hatred of the divine prefecture single-handedly and offended the dark world and the empty divine realm at the same time, becoming the talk of various major worlds. You are also the heir of Emperor Yi Qing, who was previously one of the two emperors of the divine prefecture. It is difficult not to pay attention to you. However, it is still a surprise that you appeared in Six Desires Heaven and killed Mortian." This caused the hearts of the cultivators who did not know Yi Futian to tremble. This cultivator, who killed Great Elder Mortian, actually had such a glorious past in the original realm? He was the heir of Emperor Yi Qing? If so, why had Donghuang Imperial Palace let him go? Even cultivators of the Western world knew about the two emperors of the divine prefecture. It was just that their impressions of the two emperors weren't as deep as that of the members of the divine prefecture. Yi Futian did not say any more. Lord Six Desires knew a lot about him. As to what Lord Six Desires would do, he must have already made up his mind. It was meaningless for Yi Futian to say any more, he only needed to listen. Yi Futian, you made too many enemies in the original realm. Now, upon just arriving in the Western world, you killed Great Elder Mortian. It seems that with your way of doing things, you will never find peace wherever you go, continued Lord Six Desires. You have exceptional talent and will achieve great things in the future. With the inheritance of Emperor Yi Qing, you will certainly pursue the highest peak one day. You should cherish your life more. Thank you for the advice, Senior, replied Yi Futian. Lord Six Desires offered, it seems that your arrival in Six Desires Heaven is also fate. Why don't you stay and cultivate in the Six Desires Heavenly Palace? You can reflect in the Heavenly Palace for some time. Consider it your penance for Mortian's death. If you are willing to join the Heavenly Palace, I will do my best to improve your cultivation. In the Western world, no one from the Divine Prefecture will disturb you here. You can focus on cultivating in peace. After saying so much, he actually wanted Yi Futian to stay and cultivate in the Six Desires Heavenly Palace. However, was that all to it? Yi Futian did not believe that it was so simple. Lord Six Desires had actually generously offered to take him in to cultivate in the Heavenly Palace. He would even guide Yi Futian in his cultivation and help him improve. I dare not accept your offer. I have no contribution worthy of the Heavenly Palace. I would not dare to accept your generosity and gain the protection of the Heavenly Palace, said Yi Futian. He said this in a testing tone. He wanted to see what Lord Six Desires wanted exactly. Lord Six Desires expounded, your talents and the techniques you cultivated are all treasures. While you cultivate, you can also help the members of the Heavenly Palace improve together with you. I will also be able to benefit greatly from this. If you are willing to go all out in sharing your resources with us, I believe that one day, you can become an absolute existence. When that time comes, aside from the great emperor, no one can stand against you. His voice was calm and did not waver at the slightest. It was as though he was explaining an extremely simple matter. When Yi Futian heard him say this, he felt chills down his spine. Before this, he had experienced Great Elder Mortian's ability firsthand. Compared with Lord Six Desires, Great Elder Mortian's methods were insignificant. Great Elder Mortian had at least tried to rob Yi Futian directly. As for Lord Six Desires, he had been extremely polite to Yi Futian ever since Yi Futian came to the Heavenly Palace. He was generous and praised Yi Futian, allowing him to join the Heavenly Palace to cultivate and provide protection. However, Lord Six Desires was not just after one or two treasures, such as the divine body of Shinjia the Great Emperor. He wanted all the inheritances that Yi Futian possessed. He wanted to use everything that Yi Futian had to strengthen his own members. This was plundering in the complete sense of the word. Lord Six Desires wanted to obtain his techniques and the teachings of the various great emperors. It was because Lord Six Desires knew about Yi Futian that he wanted everything Yi Futian had. It was one thing for Lord Six Desire to try to obtain them by force. In his eyes, he seemed to think that he was helping Yi Futian and providing a win-win situation. It seemed that he thought that Yi Futian should be grateful to him and willingly surrender all that he possessed. This was more than being shameless. Lord Six Desires had transcended shamelessness. From his point of view, it was righteous. Chapter 2436, News. Although he felt a chill run down his spine, Yi Futian did not betray any emotion on his face. He appeared extremely calm, as though his heart was not wavering at the slightest. After he pondered for a while, he bowed slightly towards Lord Six Desires and said, "Lord Six Desires, what you have said is precisely what I was thinking. In the original realm, the various forces of the divine prefecture are after me, and Princess Donghuang led her divine generals to take my life. I was forced to only be able to cultivate in the Ziwei segmentum and could not step foot in the original realm at all. Hence, I left the realm behind and came to the Western world to seek out fateful encounters for cultivation. When I reach the peak of cultivation, I will certainly return there." Yi Futian's tone was sincere. It seemed as though he was pouring his heart out. Of course, it was unimportant as to whether or not Lord Six Desires believed him. Before this, Yi Futian had gone against Great Elder Mortian with brain and brawn. They had tried to outmaneuver each other. In the end, Yi Futian had emerged victorious. Right now, Lord Six Desires wanted everything that Yi Futian possessed. However, instead of plundering, Lord Six Desires attempted to get the treasures using a gentler way. It was because he had an even bigger scheme in mind. He desired not only the divine body of Shinjia the Great Emperor but all the teachings Yi Futian had inherited. Unless Yi Futian voluntarily gave Lord Six Desires the teachings, the latter couldn't possibly acquire them through pillaging. If pillaging Yi Futian worked, Lord Six Desires would most likely not have used such a gentle way to achieve his goal. "Since we are of the same mind, that's naturally best," Lord Six Desires said, nodding in approval after listening to Yi Futian's response. "Yi Futian, since you said so, does it mean that you are willing to cultivate in the Six Desires Heavenly Palace?" Yi Futian affirmed his decision while nodding, saying, "I'm willing to become a disciple of the Six Desires Heavenly Palace. I will devote my time to mediation in the Heavenly Palace so that I can improve my cultivation and be able to return to the original realm in the future." He added on while looking at Lord Six Desires, "In the future, if I encounter anything that I don't understand while cultivating, I hope Lord Six Desires won't mind going through the trouble to teach me." Lord Six Desires replied, "You have exceptional talent to begin with. The Six Desires Heavenly Palace benefits from you joining us as well. Since you're willing to become a disciple here, I will naturally not mistreat you. You can come to see me regardless of what kinds of problems you face while cultivating. Many thanks, Lord Six Desires." As Yi Futian said this, he waved his palm and instantly, the corpse of Shinjia the Great Emperor appeared. Yi Futian said, "Lord Six Desires, This is the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. In the past, I was fortunate to comprehend and resonate with the divine body by accident, allowing me to be able to control it now. However, in the end, it is still not a part of me, and thus, my spiritual soul is greatly exhausted whenever I use it. There's a risk of me facing backlash too. Now, I will leave it here in the heavenly palace. With your profound cultivation, I'm sure you can better control this divine body. The eyes of the surrounding cultivators narrowed as they stared at the divine body. Then, they averted their gazes and looked at Yi Futian. They were all shocked, putting on astonished expressions. Even Sai Yi, who brought Yi Futian here, was taken aback by his action. No wonder Yi Futian appeared so calm throughout their journey here. He had most likely made up his mind on what to do since the very beginning. This fellow was bold to actually give away the divine body. After he did so, his life was not up to him to decide anymore. He had lost his trump card. He would be defenseless when faced with Lord Six Desires. Yi Futian submitting the divine body to Lord Six Desires meant that he was putting his life in the Lord's hands. In order to gain Lord Six Desires' trust, Yi Futian was bold and pushed himself past the point of no return. Sai Yi had no idea what Yi Futian was really thinking. After all, Yi Futian managed to kill Great Elder Mortian with a scheme. Great Elder Mortian was cautious and cunning to begin with, so Yi Futian could pull the whole thing off meant that there was more to him than what met the eye. Anyhow, what Yi Futian thought was irrelevant now. The crucial thing was that Yi Futian could no longer escape from the grasp of Lord Six Desires. He was completely under the Lord's control now. Most likely Yi Futian gave the Lord the divine body in exchange for his own safety. Lord Six Desires was extremely pleased with Yi Futian's action. He scanned the surroundings and said to the cultivators in the heavenly palace, "From now on, Yi Futian is a guardian of the Six Desires heavenly palace. He is one of us. Do you understand?" "Yes, Lord Six Desires," replied the crowd, nodding obediently. Then, someone said to Yi Futian, "Congratulations, Guardian Yi." Yi Futian nodded slightly in response. Then, he looked at Lord Six Desires and said, "My spiritual soul was injured when I fought with Great Elder Mortian. I need some time to heal my wounds. I don't think I will be able to have any discussions with you in the near future. I want to rest for a period of time. After my spiritual soul has recovered, I will share what I have obtained through fateful encounters with you so that you can give me some pointers." The crowd was speechless. That meant that he was going to surrender what he had obtained through fateful encounters to Lord Six Desires. As expected, Lord Six Desires was pleased when he saw Yi Futian proactively offering up the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor and then expressing his willingness to share what he had learned through his fateful encounters. He revealed a smile on his face and nodded his head. He said to Yi Futian, "No worries. Since your spiritual soul is injured, you naturally need to rest. We can wait until you have recovered to discuss other matters." Even the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor had been offered up. Yi Futian was merely an 8th-tier cultivator. No matter how he recovered, even if his cultivation became stronger after his recovery, it was meaningless. Lord Six Desires could destroy him at any given moment. He was naturally not afraid of Yi Futian stirring up trouble. "Many thanks, Lord Six Desires," said Yi Futian. "Escort Guardian Yi to cultivate in Yangshan Mountain." Lord Six Desires ordered one of the cultivators beside him. Immediately, someone came and led Yi Futian away from the hall. Yi Futian left with the person obediently. Of course, Lord Six Desires and other top cultivators were reluctant to leave the place. They remained at the hall, where the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor was. Yangshan Mountain, which was located above the Six Desires heavenly palace, was indeed a suitable place for meditation. Yi Futian cultivated there calmly. As for the divine body, did the others think that it was that easy to be able to communicate with it? As expected, many days had passed and Lord Six Desires and the others were still at the hall trying to comprehend the divine body. They still couldn't comprehend or resonate with it. However, the more challenging the task was, the more intense their desires to acquire it were. On the contrary, Yi Futian himself seemed to have really let go of the divine body. It was as though it was really a gift to Lord Six Desires. Six Desires Heaven was a part of the Western world, similar to a domain of the 18 domains in the Divine Prefecture. Blind Tai and the others left Six Desires Heaven and came to another region. Beneath them was the golden-winged giant pengbird, Mo Yunzi. He was mentally linked with Yi Futian and knew everything that was happening to him. Hence, Yi Futian had sent him to follow Blind Tai's group. "We have arrived." Their group advanced and traversed through the clouds. "Let's head to the central region," said Chen Yi plainly. They continued on their way. After a few days, news began to spread around this region. The ruler of Six Desires Heaven, Lord Six Desires, had obtained the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor as well as the teachings of the Great Emperors. Rumor has it that he was cultivating in seclusion and his cultivation was improving by leaps and bounds. He was undergoing a metamorphosis at a frenzied pace. In the future, he would become the strongest existence below the Great Emperors. Regardless of where they were, the cultivators all yearned to acquire the teachings of the top figures. The news regarding Lord Six Desires spread at an astonishing speed. All top forces had caught wind of it. More and more cultivators knew about it at an incredible speed. Chapter 2437, Arriving at the Six Desires Heavenly Palace. Yi Futian was initially still cultivating atop the Six Desire Heaven Palace, but Lord Six Desires invited him to come down from the Yangshan Mountain. Before the stairs, Lord Six Desires and the other high-level cultivators were all present. In the middle stood the divine frame of Xinjia the Great. Everyone kept a distance from the divine frame. Clearly, although quite some time had passed, no one could solve the mystery of Xinjia the Great. Until today, no one could bring it away, including Lord Six Desires himself, which was why he sent people to call Yi Futian over. "Lord," Yi Futian bowed slightly toward Lord Six Desires and greeted him after arriving. "How's your injury?" Lord Six Desires still remembered to care about Yi Futian's injuries. "Almost recovered. I should be fully rejuvenated in a few days' time," Yi Futian replied. "Millimeter." Lord Six Desires nodded and said, "For the past few days, the others and I were all observing this divine frame of Xinjia the Great. Even now, we still cannot understand how it operates. No wonder you were crowned as the number one of the original realm and were chased after by various forces of the Divine Prefecture. Your talents are astonishing, to say the least. Back then, how did you reach resonance with the divine frame of Xinjia the Great?" With the status and power level of Lord Six Desires, it was definitely an embarrassing thing for him to be asking Yi Futian. Yi Futian had already spontaneously handed over the body, gifting it to him to study. Yet he couldn't figure it out and had to come to consult Yi Futian. One could imagine the emotions going through Lord Six Desires. If it was easy to ask, he would have done it back then. However, so many days had passed, and he still couldn't fathom it. Not to mention, there were some rumors starting to spread, so Lord Six Desires had no choice but to call Yi Futian over to consult him. He didn't forget to praise Yi Futian before the fact, so at least it wouldn't be as humiliating. Yi Futian appeared to be pondering before he answered, "Lord, back then, when I was fortunate enough to see the divine frame in the Shangqing domain, no one could communicate with it. In fact, even looking at it would inflict severe injuries, causing one's eyes to bleed. I was no different. Afterward, through perception and understanding, I was able to resonate with the runes inside of the divine frame, which then allowed me to activate them and fuse with my spiritual soul and mortal body to gain control. But if you need a detailed explanation of how it was done, it's really difficult to spell it out clearly." Lord Six Desires nodded slightly. Naturally, he had also entered that world of runes inside the divine frame. However, it was a domain of path obliteration. The moment he entered, he was attacked. When he tried to gain control over the body of Xinjia the Great, he immediately experienced severe backlash. "Is there any way to quickly gain control over it?" Lord Six Desires asked, his voice lower than usual. Yi Futian pondered for a while before shaking his head. He looked toward Lord Six Desires only to see the Lord looking back at him. Although he appeared calm and composed on the surface, Yi Futian was exceptionally clear of the circumstances right now. With the relationship between him and Lord Six Desires, it was impossible to have mutual trust. Of course they were both trying to scheme against each other. Despite his explanations, how could Lord Six Desires completely believe him? Futian said, Lord, previously, besides inheriting the divine frame of Shunjia the Great, I also inherited his divine requiem and Ziwei the Great's techniques of attack. However, Ziwei the Great's inheritance is still dependent on the Ziwei segmentum even after all this time because the will of the Great Emperor was embedded within those celestial stars. When I was cultivating there, I could feel the presence of Ziwei the Great's will. As such, all I can do is to seek advice from Lord about my cultivation methods. He used the word advice. As expected, a gratified expression could be seen from Lord Six Desires' eyes and brows. He said, all right. Although I'm not an expert in music, the great paths are all interconnected. Perhaps I could still give you some advice. Besides, I would like to experience the divine requiem as well. As for the offensive techniques of Ziwei the Great, surely there's something extraordinary about that, too. Futian sneered inside. He knew that Lord Six Desires was a greedy person who never knew content. His music and the techniques of Ziwei the Great, he wanted all of them. So long as Futian mentioned them, he would want them. I'll transmit it to Lord through divine consciousness, Futian said as divine light started blinking between his brows and started to travel towards the middle of Lord Six Desires' brows. With his cultivation levels, of course Lord Six Desires wouldn't be afraid of Futian. Without the body of Shunjia the Great, it wouldn't even be possible for Futian's divine consciousness to launch a sneak attack on him, so he just allowed that divine light to enter into his forehead. Soon, the light dissipated from both of them. A smile appeared on Lord Six Desires' face. He was clearly very satisfied with the information that Futian had transmitted to him. Although the divine requiem was useless for him, it was a lost divine melody, the greatest composition of Shunjia the Great, who was the greatest musician of an era. Even if he just used it to trade in the future, he could exchange it for other supreme treasures. On top of that, the attacking technique of Ziwei the Great was also extremely powerful. He could study it and fuse it into his own methods of attack. Since you haven't recovered fully from your injuries, you should go back first and try to recover as soon as possible. Later on, I'll study these cultivation methods carefully. When I gain a decent understanding of it, I'll give you some advice, Lord Six Desires said to Futian. His tone was a lot more gentle than before. Although he knew that Futian still had other treasures on him, he wasn't in a rush to get them. Since Futian was willing to hand them over spontaneously, he was glad to treat Futian with some respect in return. He liked smart people. All right, thank you for going through the trouble, Lord, Futian said. Despite passing on cultivation methods to Lord Six Desires, he behaved as though he was indebted to him instead. Yet, none of the cultivators around felt that there was anything wrong. It seemed as if this was supposed to be how things go. Futian was staying in Lord Six Desires' territory, and his life was in the hands of the Lord. How would he dare not to hand over all of his possessions? The Lord was already being very generous to allow him to recover from his injuries and cultivate in peace. After leaving, Futian returned to Yongshan Mountain and went back to cultivation. It was exactly as the cultivators in the Six Desires Heavenly Palace thought. He knew what sort of circumstances he was under and understood what should and should not be done. Right now, other than cultivation, all he should be doing was lay low. As for the divine methods that he transmitted to Lord Six Desires, it wasn't complete, though it was extraordinary nonetheless. Although Lord Six Desires was powerful, he had never seen those two divine methods before, so naturally, he wouldn't be able to tell. Besides, those were indeed real, just incomplete. After several more days, Lord Six Desires was still cultivating in the Six Desires Heavenly Palace. Suddenly, several powerful auras descended upon the palace encircled by a mist of divine aura, which made Lord Six Desires frown. He looked up into the air with a cold and impassive gaze as he said, "Why not inform me before coming to the Six Desires Heavenly Palace?" The hearts of the cultivators who were cultivating in the palace trembled slightly when they heard the Lord Six Desires. Based on his tone, it seemed that those who arrived were on the same cultivation level as him. Otherwise, how would they dare to descend directly upon the Six Desires Heavenly Palace? And the Lord used the word inform just now. If it weren't cultivators of the same level as him, he would likely have slammed his palm toward them already. So, who was here? Atop the skies, the clouds surged and rolled rigorously as waves of extremely powerful aura seeped downwards. Then, a voice sounded from high up in the air, apologies for coming without notifying and disturbing Lord Six Desires' cultivation. As the voice sounded, a figure appeared high up in the skies. 2 other cultivators arrived from another direction. The 3 great cultivators arrived at the Six Desires' heavenly palace at the same time. All 3 were cultivators on the same level as the Lord Six Desires, each an overlord of the region. At this moment, Lord Six Desires instantly understood what they had come for. Cultivators of this level coming personally. Clearly, it wouldn't be for no reason. Recently, only one thing had happened in the Six Desires' heavenly palace, so naturally, they had come for that. The 3 great cultivators looked downward at the divine frame of Shinjia the Great. A wave of amazement went through their hearts. So it was actually true. Lord Six Desires obtained a divine corpse, and it was the divine frame of a great emperor who stood at the very top of the pyramid in the ancient era, Shinjia the Great. Previously, this divine frame appeared in the divine prefecture. Now it was in the Six Desires' heavenly palace. Lord Six Desires sneered inside. They'd already arrived here. What did they mean by disturbing his cultivation? What a sham. Of course, he knew all 3 of these cultivators. We've previously heard rumors that Lord Six Desires obtained the divine frame of Shinjia the Great. It turned out to be true. Since you obtained the diving frame, why didn't you invite us to study it together? You're here alone, yet you can't fathom it. That's rather boring, isn't it? Another of the 3 said while staring at the divine frame. They'd all heard that it was challenging to gain an understanding of the body of Shinjia the Great. Looking at the situation now, it seemed to be true. Clearly, until now, Lord Six Desires still hadn't managed to do it. As they spoke, their divine consciousness expanded rapidly to their surroundings. It seemed that they were trying to encase the entire Six Desires' heavenly palace in their divine consciousness. Don't you think this is going a little overboard? Lord Six Desires could sense that their divine consciousness was directly invading the Six Desires' heavenly palace, and his tone turned cold. This was an obvious provocation. However, the 3 of them didn't care. They had already come to the Six Desires' heaven, so they wouldn't concern themselves with that. Besides, they had already discussed this before coming over. As such, they could surely suppress Lord Six Desires so he wouldn't dare to turn against them. We've heard that the phenom of the original realm Futian was being imprisoned in the Six Desires' heavenly palace by you, Six Desires, so we just wanted to see for ourselves. Don't mind us. A smile appeared on their faces as they'd already found the answer. Of course, Yangshan Mountain was part of the area covered by their divine consciousness, and they could see a white-haired young cultivator there. His aura was extraordinary. That was probably Futian. Lord Six Desires was seriously ruthless, imprisoning Futian inside the Six Desires' heavenly palace and forcing him to hand over the divine methods that he was cultivating. According to the rumors, other than the divine frame of Shinjia the Great, Lord Six Desires had also obtained several other inheritances of great emperors. He was exceedingly ambitious, wanting to become the greatest cultivator below the great emperors. Of course, that was the dream of all cultivators on their level, perhaps even further than that. It wasn't a surprise to them that Lord Six Desires had such thoughts. However, now that they knew about it, Lord Six Desires can forget about having the divine frame of the great emperor and the divine methods all to himself. At the very least, they had to get a piece of the pie. Futian willingly entered the Six Desires' heavenly palace to cultivate as one of us. How is that imprisonment? I'm afraid what you said was blown way out of proportion. Is it? One of the 3 cultivators said impassively as his divine consciousness landed on Yangshan Mountain. He asked Futian, did you enter the Six Desires' heavenly palace for cultivation willingly? Futian raised his head in Yangshan Mountain and looked toward the Six Desires' heavenly palace. They were finally here. Chapter 2438, Compromise, Balance. Yi Futian remained silent and didn't speak. Upon seeing his reaction, Lord Six Desires asked, Yi Futian, just speak the truth. Did you willingly enter the Six Desires' heavenly palace? Did I force you to do it? Yi Futian stood there and continued to be silent. At such times, not speaking would be more impactful than speaking. His right, just speak the truth. Did Lord Six Desires imprison you in the heavenly palace? Because of his threats, you had to hand over the divine frame, one of the three cultivators asked in an attempt to pressure Yi Futian. At this juncture, of course Yi Futian wouldn't rashly follow what he said, that would be foolish. These people weren't related to him in any way. Why would they care about his life? They had only come here because they cared about the divine frame and the inheritance of the great emperors. The moment he admitted that he was threatened, these people would have an excuse to act. Afterward, it wouldn't matter if he was alive or not. Come over here and tell them, Lord Six Desires continued. His might shrouded the Six Desires' heaven. Six Desires, you are coercing him, a cultivator said, but Lord Six Desires didn't care. Yi Futian finally moved. He knew that if he continued to remain silent, it would have the opposite effect of what he wanted. He walked out of Yangshan Mountain and flew through the air. He came before the main hall of the Six Desires' heavenly palace and chose a position to stand in. He bowed slightly toward Lord Six Desires and the three great cultivators. Greetings, Lord and seniors. I was invited by the Lord to join the Six Desires' heaven. Lord Six Desires was willing to give me advice on my cultivation, which is why I entered the heavenly palace. The divine frame will be much more powerful in the hands of the Lord. It will then be able to protect me better. At the same time, the Lord is willing to teach me about the methods, which I have inherited from the great emperors. It will be beneficial towards improving my cultivation. It seemed as though Yi Futian's words came right from his heart. It was sincere, candid, and polite. Yet, the cultivators present could sense that something was wrong with what he said. He was invited by Lord Six Desires, the Lord was willing to give him advice in his cultivation, and was even willing to teach him about the methods inherited from the great emperor. Yi Futian needed Lord Six Desires to teach him about the methods of the great emperor? That was certainly a thought-provoking statement. Lord Six Desires also sensed that there was something wrong with what Yi Futian said, but after all, there weren't any loopholes in his words. He had admitted that he entered the palace willingly. At this point, Lord Six Desires couldn't flip on Yi Futian, as that would only prove the three great cultivators right that he was threatening Yi Futian. One of the great cultivators said, I see how it is. If Lord Six Desires can do it, then I can too. I know that you have made many enemies in the divine prefecture. If you really get into trouble in the future, I'm afraid Lord Six Desires alone wouldn't be able to fight them all. Besides, it's been so many days, yet Lord Six Desires still hasn't solved the mystery of the divine frame. It's probably not possible for him to become the greatest cultivator below the great emperors. He continued, I came from Ymor heaven, and I'm the lord of a heavenly palace as well. I'm willing to provide aegis for you and teach you cultivation. Are you willing to join my palace for cultivation? Ymor, Yi Futian already joined my Six Desires heavenly palace. What's the meaning of this? Lord Six Desires asked. Who said Yi Futian could only enter one palace? Another one of the great cultivators said, moreover, Six Desires, you said you were going to provide protection for Yi Futian. Do you really think that you alone can fend against all of the forces from the divine prefecture? If that's the case, would you like to take us on 1 against 3 and try to spar with the three of us? This question made Lord Six Desires' expression turn a little ugly. These three cultivators had clearly come to snatch Yi Futian from him. 1 against 3. Of course, he couldn't do it. These three were all on the same cultivation level as him. They'd known each other for years and had battled before. He couldn't even guarantee that he would win 1-on-1, let alone 1-on-3. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty are right. I don't mind either, the last person said. He was wearing a kasaya. He was a divine Buddhist monk with an extraordinary aura. The three great cultivators had reached the same conclusion. They were overtly snatching Yi Futian, making him join their palaces while he had already entered the Six Desires' heavenly palace. And they believed that Yi Futian wouldn't reject them. These three great cultivators were Lord Yi of Yemor Heaven, Lord Liberty of Liberty Heaven, and Lord Initial Zen. The Western world was vast, nearly boundless. It was said to have various worlds and various small worlds. All three of the cultivators and Lord Six Desires were powerful beings who stood atop all of these worlds, high above the masses. Cultivators of their level rarely appear together. Yet today, all four of them had come for Yi Futian. More accurately, they came for the divine item. In his mind, Yi Futian was a little taken aback by the words of the three cultivators. So this was the wisdom of the cultivators at the top of the pyramid. He only hinted a little, and they immediately knew exactly what to do. They knew that even if he was threatened, he wouldn't say anything rash and could not have a falling out with Lord Six Desires. They proposed to let him join their palaces so he wouldn't have to turn on Lord Six Desires. At the same time, these great cultivators could share his divine item. Perhaps they wouldn't even have to fight each other. As long as Lord Six Desires made some small compromises, everyone would be satisfied. Such good scheming. Yi Futian couldn't help but feel impressed. On top of that, he couldn't reject them. It's a pity that these four cultivators were well matched with each other. According to Mo Yun's memories, not one of them was above the others in any way. As such, they were able to create a balanced situation. Yi Futian, do you agree to this? Lord Yi asked Yi Futian directly. I already joined the Six Desires' heavenly palace, so I need the Lord Six Desires to agree to it. Yi Futian looked toward Lord Six Desires, appearing very composed. Of course, he wouldn't reject them. Being controlled by Lord Six Desires alone was far more menacing to him than the four great cultivators forming a system of checks and balances on each other. But he wouldn't agree directly. Instead, he let Lord Six Desires make the decision. Six Desires, what do you say? Lord Yi asked Lord Six Desires. Three gazes landed on him, which made his expression turn a little ugly. Lord Six Desires snorted and said, Yi Futian already joined my Six Desires' heavenly palace, yet the three of you are making such aggressive demands. I will remember what happened today. Does that mean that you agree? Lord Liberty asked, but Lord Six Desires didn't answer him. Instead, he turned toward the body of Shunjia the Great and continued to study it. He started earlier than the other three cultivators. If he could understand the workings of the divine frame before the three of them, based on the power that Yi Futian could unleash back then, it would be enough to deal with the three of them. When that happened, he'd let them know who was in charge. But now, he would have to avoid direct conflict with the three. He had absolutely no confidence in battling them 1-on-3. In that case, Yi Futian, from now on, you will be under us, Lord Yi said toward Yi Futian. Yi Futian sighed inside. It was a pity that they didn't start fighting directly. But there was no rush. The seed of conflict had already been planted, and a fallout was a mere matter of time. He needed to wait patiently for some time. Thank you for being so gracious. Yi Futian bowed toward them. I shall take my leave first. He turned and went off, leaving the place. The three great cultivators all stared at the divine frame of Shunjia the Great, then their figures descended and landed before it as their divine consciousness surged toward the divine frame. All of them wanted to study, understand, and obtain the divine frame. Chapter 2439, Comprehension. The Six Desire Heavenly Palace appeared peaceful outside, but because the four cultivators were comprehending the divine body simultaneously, the heavenly palace was under a state of constant suppression. However, Yi Futian continued cultivating quietly as if no one was around. On this day, Lord Yi of Yemor Heaven descended on Yangshan Mountain and came to him. Greetings, Lord Yi, Yi Futian said while he gave a slight bow. These three had been here for a few days, so he knew of their identities. Lord Yi nodded slightly at Yi Futian and said, You are considered one of us now. Would you follow me to Yemor Heaven to cultivate? I'm able to cultivate quietly here at Six Desires' heavenly palace. I have no plan to leave for the time being, Yi Futian replied. He knew very well that none of their conversations could escape Lord Six Desire's ears, and Yi Futian understood what to say and what not to say. Don't worry, you are also counted as one of our 3 clans. As long as you want, you may go to whichever place to cultivate. Lord Six Desires can't stop you. Lord Yi continued to advocate, but Yi Futian remained unmoved. In fact, he seemed quite uninterested. To Yi Futian, there was no difference between going to Yem or Heaven and staying at Six Desires' heavenly palace. In any of those places, he would be under their control and placed under house arrest. Yi Futian understood very well what all of them were after. I appreciate my lord's kindness. Yi Futian continued to respond calmly without much emotion. Lord Yi didn't say anything more but continued via voice transmission instead. I know you are under the coercion of Lord Six Desires, but you can see from the situation today that the 3 of us have an absolute advantage against Lord Six Desires. As long as you are willing to comply with our wishes, we will take you away from here. Furthermore, we have no malice against you, and we will not harm you. Lord Six Desires, on the other hand, will most likely end you once you've given him what he wants. Elder, I am already under the tutelage of Six Desires' heavenly palace, so Lord Six Desires will not do me harm, Yi Futian responded via voice transmission. Lord Yi stared into his eyes and transmitted, if this is the case, then you, too, are also under our tutelage. Pass on the method you have cultivated to us 3, and we will see if we can comprehend it and give you some pointers. It was rumored that Lord Six Desires had obtained the divine method from Yi Futian. As Yi Futian had been under house arrest for many days, presumably this was true. No way Lord Six Desires would not covet the divine method in Yi Futian's possession, so they, too, wanted to have a chance to cultivate it as well. I must ask your forgiveness in this matter, Elder, Yi Futian refused through voice transmission. Lord Yi frowned. An indistinct coercion was released from his body and descended upon Yi Futian. I hope Elder can understand the difficulties I'm facing. Yi Futian continued to communicate via voice transmission. Lord Yi responded with a disapproving snort. Then, a cold and indifferent voice said, Lord Yi, what do you think you are doing? Are you threatening this young man in secret? You said that you want Yi Futian to cultivate with you, but this is how you are treating him? The person who spoke at this time was none other than Lord Six Desires. Lord Yi glanced at Yi Futian with cold eyes but soon left in a huff. However, he could sense that Yi Futian was deeply wary of Lord Six Desires, therefore, he acted with extreme caution. Yi Futian, Lord Yi has told me about you. If you want, the 3 of us can help you get out of this jam. A voice came landed on Yangshan Mountain, entering Yi Futian's ears. This time the person who was speaking was Lord Liberty. Obviously, Lord Yi had had a talk with him, so Lord Liberty was now trying to persuade him, seeking to alter Yi Futian's mind. I am afraid I don't deserve such consideration, Yi Futian continued, but, it's true that I have no intention of leaving for the time being. Lord Liberty raised his brows slightly. It seemed that Yi Futian was still unwilling to take the chance. What is it that you want? Another voice now came into his ears. It was Lord Initial Zen who had spoke. The voice of Lord Initial Zen seemed to ooze a magical power as he was speaking to Yi Futian. You killed Great Elder Mortian and are now trapped inside the Six Desires' heavenly palace. I know this was done against your will. You may speak freely about what you want with us. Yi Futian was somewhat moved at this gesture, but soon he composed himself again and responded, I have nothing to ask for now. Think about it first and find me later. Lord Initial Zen's voice was like the sound of Zen, which was extremely mesmerizing to those who heard him. Thank you, my lord, Yi Futian responded, but he was secretly alarmed. Among these 4 cultivators, only Lord Initial Zen was a Buddhist cultivator. Furthermore, judging from the actions of these people, Lord Initial Zen might be the one who posed the greatest threat to him. Of course, he would not easily trust anyone here. In the blink of an eye, a few more days passed by. On this day, another group of people descended from the sky and came to Six Desires' heavenly palace. This group of people had unusual and extraordinary temperaments. Upon their arrival, even the eyes of Lord Six Desires looked a little grave. Sitting there, he looked at the visitors and said, You have come from afar. Please enter the heavenly palace for a respite. There is no need. The cultivator in the lead was also someone who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. He glanced at the divine body below, then said, Saint Shunchan asked us to bring you a message. We heard that there is a divine body obtained by 6 Desires Heavenly Palace. You may comprehend it for a period of time here, but after 3 months, you must transport the divine body to Shunchan Hall. The eyes of Lord 6 Desires and the other 3 cultivators narrowed slightly, and there was disquiet in their hearts. Even Saint Shunchan was meddling in their business now. Sure enough, even someone at Saint Shunchan's level wanted to witness something like the divine body. These emissaries were sent to let them know that they had only 3 months before they had to surrender the divine body. They were well acquainted with the likes of Saint Shunchan. Although they were all existences who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path, there was still a great chasm between their realms. Saint Shunchan was one of the Buddhas of the West Heaven, the controlling principality of the Western world. The control he had over his territory was total and absolute, his cultivation was monstrous, and the forces within his control were most terrifying. Lord 6 Desires and Saint Shunchan may be technically in the same realm, but if they were to battle, Lord 6 Desires would not be an able contender in the least. The emissaries did not bother to wait for Lord 6 Desires to respond before they turned around and left. It was as if they were here to announce the instructions, and Lord 6 Desires' consent was unnecessary. In the world of cultivation, this had always been the case. Futian, who was cultivating, heard it as well. It seemed that finally, someone stronger was getting involved, and as a result, the pressure on Lord 6 Desires would be greater. 3 more months. Lord 6 Desires secretly exclaimed. He looked towards the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, urging even stronger willpower as if he was willing to try no matter the cost. He must control this divine body, and as long as he could control it with elevated strength, what more could Saint Shunchan do to him? Clearly, the other 3 cultivators had heard the proclamation as well. Out of all of them, Lord Initial Zen was the calmest. He belonged to the Buddhist sect and came from the same clan as Saint Shunchan. If he ever encountered Saint Shunchan in person, he was obligated to address him as his senior brother. As time went by, on this day, the divine body unexpectedly revealed rays of divine light. It seemed that the divine power inside had been urged somehow, and more was gathering. Lord 6 Desires' divine consciousness frantically poured into it as the power of the Great Path invaded the divine body. This caused the divine body to roar and howl. Golden divine light surrounding heaven and the earth with astounding aura. The other 3 major cultivators narrowed their eyes as they beheld this sight. Their eyes became heavy and serious all at once as the coercion of the Great Path was being unleashed. At Yangshan Mountain, Futian closed his eyes, and a picture appeared in his mind. It was the picture before the Great Hall. Chapter 2440, Disaster. In front of the Great Hall at 6 Desires Heavenly Palace, the divine body roared. Just as Lord 6 Desires directed his attention at the divine body, he saw the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor Jiao suddenly flew straight towards him. Humph! The other 3 lords opened their eyes and looked at Lord 6 Desires. They didn't expect Lord 6 Desires would comprehend the body first. The sound of the Buddha reverberated, resounding through the void between heaven and earth. It shook those who heard it to their core. An enormous golden Buddhist handprint appeared in the void, which then buckled down over the space occupied by the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, preventing the divine body from moving towards Lord 6 Desires. Previously, all 4 of them had been comprehending the divine body here, but since none of them received any enlightenment, a certain delicate balance had been maintained among them. However, now it appeared that Lord 6 Desires might be on the verge of comprehending the divine body, thus resonating with it. He might even take control of it. At a time like this, they couldn't remain as tranquil as they had been. They must take action immediately. Lord 6 Desires was no longer holding back either. His palms trembled in the air, and suddenly, the space seemed to be filled with crazy explosions. Some fist aurora burst through the air and blasted on that golden Buddhist handprint, splitting it open. At the same time, Lord Yi and Lord Liberty both made their moves as well. Suddenly, a terrifying dark space appeared in front of Lord Six Desires, filled with petrifying black vortices. A black divine halberd descended above his head, trailed by a wave of horrific destruction from above the firmament. Behind Lord Liberty, a gigantic divine shadow appeared, and a large palm slammed down. It covered the sky and the sun, overwhelming that corner of the world. The three great cultivators attacked at the same time. Lord Six Desires was surrounded by divine light, which had turned into a terrifying golden halo, forming a passive defense. Everything around him was in a state of topsy-turvy, as the ground below was quacking and crumbling. Above the sky, the dark halberd of destruction appeared inside the storming vortices descended with pitch-black lightning. A terrifying phantom, like a deity in the night, appeared as a god of ultimate destruction in the void. The divine halberd slammed down in a second and blasted on the golden light screen, cracking the defense put up by Lord Six Desires. The terrible lightning wandered on the light screen as the surrounding space seemed on the brink of total destruction. However, the space of the Western world was far more stable than the one in the original realm and the divine prefecture, so the fissures didn't extend far. But the Six Desires' heavenly palace was in bad shape. When the storm was sweeping through the surroundings, chasms opened up in the ground, many of the buildings collapsed. The cultivators of the Six Desires' heavenly palace had already retreated frantically at the beginning of the battle. They knew that participation in a clash at this level would spell certain death. They had absolutely no way to intervene. "The three of you are overstepping," Lord Six Desires said as he slowly stood up. The golden storm that surrounded him became more frightening as he stood there like a heavenly deity. But the three of them didn't bother to listen to what Lord Six Desires had to say. They rolled towards the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor with the power of the Great Path, forcing the divine body to float in their direction. They would not allow Lord Six Desires to comprehend and control the divine body. Boom! But at this moment, an awesome golden divine light bloomed from the divine body, like thousands of runes as they launched an attack on the three cultivators. The three of them looked quite solemn as they surrounded their bodies with the divine light of the Great Path, protecting their bodies and spiritual souls from this invasion. They let out a cold snort, and their eyes refocused on Lord Six Desires. It seemed that Lord Six Desires, who had been tied up by the attacks, was not giving up just yet. He was still attempting to control the divine body to fight them. "What should we do?" Lord Yi asked the other two via voice transmission, clearly seeking to discuss a solution regarding Lord Six Desires. Now that they were in an all-out confrontation, they had created a shared enemy. More importantly, Lord Six Desires seemed to be able to communicate and control the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, and that was a big concern for them. If they stopped here today, Lord Six Desires would surely retaliate later. Kill. A chilling word entered the ears of the other two, and the one who spoke was Lord Initial Zen. When he uttered the word, his voice was calm, his face peaceful and benevolent. The Buddha's light lingered around him, but he was the most decisive. "That's right. Make sure there will be no future trouble." Lord Liberty agreed when he heard the word. All three of them were peak figures who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path, and it was their nature to be so determined. Since they had already decided to do this, they would not hesitate or leave him a way out. In a short period of time, they had decided on killing a peer, the most powerful cultivator of Six Desires Heaven. "Very well," Lord Yi replied, and the three of them immediately reached an agreement. In an instant, a horrific murderous intent swept through the entire Six Desires heavenly palace, and even the entire divine mountain was shrouded within. Meanwhile, that strong murderous intent was still diffusing from it. The expressions on the cultivators' faces in Six Desire heavenly palace revealed sudden panic as they all detected the murderous intent from the three cultivators. If the altercation before was only a tentative probing, now, it was more than obvious that they were joining forces to annihilate Lord Six Desires. For the sake of the divine body, these top figures would do anything to take out a heavenly lord. Of course, there was another advantage if Lord Six Desires was dead, the possibility of keeping Futian under their control. Lord Six Desires naturally noticed the murderous intent coming from the three cultivators. His face suddenly changed. When he raised his head to look into the void, he saw that the sky above the Six Desires' heavenly palace was no longer the holy land that used to be surrounded by celestial mist. It was now covered with dark clouds of catastrophe, where black lightning of destruction flashed as they blast down on the divine mountain, creating cracks on the divine mountain. In that dark light of catastrophe, an elusive face appeared. It looked like the god of destruction. It was Yemor, heaven's Lord Yi. This corner of heaven and earth had turned into an absolute realm, ruled by Lord Yi's destructive way. At the same time, in the other direction, a godlike figure appeared. It was none other than Lord Liberty. The Buddha's light lingered on the body of Lord Initial Zen as an ancient Buddha phantom appeared behind him. It was so boundlessly massive that it shielded the sky and obscured the sun. A glow began blooming in the darkness. The auras of each of the three great cultivators were breathtaking. Under this terrifying storm, all the cultivators on the mountain were appalled. This place, which was once the most powerful holy land of Six Desires heaven, seemed to have turned into hell in but a moment's time. Even the Six Desires heavenly palace was in the process of crumbling and disintegrating. These three great cultivators had steeled themselves in their resolve and no longer held back. You three are so heartless. What are you going to do with me today? The matter had gotten out of hand, and Lord Six Desires had no more fear as an overwhelming momentum swept at his three opponents. He regarded them with an extremely frosty look in his eyes. He didn't expect that just when he had comprehended a trace of this divine body, he would be met with such overwhelming backlash. Vaguely, he felt that there was something very wrong with the turn of events. How could such little comprehension cause the divine body to have such a disproportionate reaction? But there was no time for him to think things through. Yangshan Mountain, where Yi Futian was located, was also in the midst of disintegration and destruction. Above the ancient peak, Yi Futian got up and watched everything decay beneath his feet. He suspended his body in the air and looked into the far distance. There was an unmistakable chill in those eyes. Lord Six Desires had detained him here, wanting to control his life and the divine body, so now, let him have it. Chapter 2441, War. More and more cultivators gradually appeared on the outskirts of Six Desires Mountains. They watched the horrifying scene that covered the entire divine mountain from a distance away as their hearts trembled violently. These people were all cultivators from Six Desires heaven. The commotion on the divine mountain shocked the Renhuangs. Many of them rushed over here, and they witnessed this battle. What was happening? The hearts of many people quavered. Their gazes were dead fixed on the battle. They felt as though the sky was collapsing and the earth would be split apart. The divine mountain is about to crumble, someone said. The divine mountain, which floated in the sky, cracked and broke into pieces. The pieces plummeted down and became ruins. The highest holy land that towered in Six Desires heaven had been flattened during the battle. Rumor has it that the Lord can find an extraordinary cultivator who possessed a divine body. Lord Yemor, Lord Liberty, and Lord Initial Zen rushed over to the Six Desires heavenly palace upon hearing the news. Most likely, they are attacking Lord Six Desires, someone said. The cultivators could not see what was happening on the divine mountain. The region was sealed off by a domain of the Great Path. The independent space overflowed with destructive power. After a period of time, the sound of an explosion could be heard. A terrifying storm stirred up and spread toward the surroundings. Retreat quickly. The facial expression of the cultivators changed drastically as they nimbly retreated backward. The storm swept over them, and many of them were sent flying by the shockwaves. They spat out mouthfuls of blood. Even though they had tried to keep far away from the sealed-off domain of the Great Path, they were still affected by the residue shockwaves of the battle. However, even after the cultivators regained their composure, they did not take their eyes away from the battlefield. All of them were eager to witness the war that was happening inside the domain. The divine mountain no longer existed. It had fallen apart during the battle and was completely destroyed. This caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. Had the Six Desires heavenly palace been reduced to ruins just like that? A top force such as the Six Desires Heavenly Palace occupied a vast territory in the Divine Mountain. Its size was akin to that of a town. However, it had been flattened in the blink of an eye. One could imagine how vicious the battle was. Most likely many members of the Six Desires Heavenly Palace had perished. In the center of the battlefield, there were 4 cultivators standing. The cultivator who stood in the middle unleashed his aura without restraint. His killing intent was burning. His eyes were ablaze with rage. The cultivator was none other than Lord Six Desires. As for the other 3 powerful cultivators, they actually surrounded Lord Six Desires. They stood at 3 points around him. Each of them released astonishing might that pressed down on him. The battle had already reached this point. The Six Desires Heavenly Palace had also been annihilated. Many cultivators of the Six Desires Heavenly Palace had been killed. Things had already escalated to this point. It was impossible to want to make peace now. If they let Lord Six Desires escape, he would be a huge liability. Right now, rage fumed inside Lord Six Desires. He naturally knew what these 3 cultivators wanted to do. The other party had gone all out to eradicate him. They wanted to eliminate him here to prevent future trouble. Buzz. The wind and clouds in the sky churned angrily. The great path was howling. Divine halos shone. An illusory figure of the God of Liberty appeared, shielding the sun and towering over everything else. It enveloped the vast space as though the entire region had transformed into the domain of liberty. When the god put his palms together to form a seal, 108,000 gigantic palms materialized in the sky above. The palms stacked together, and it was an impressive sight to behold. Lord Six Desires, you can only blame yourself for being ignorant of the current state of affairs, said Lord Liberty. Then 108,000 gigantic palms plummeted all at once. The space was on the verge of collapsing as it shook frenziedly. The palms overwhelmed the sky as they blasted towards Lord Six Desires. Rumble. A golden light screen once again appeared around Lord Six Desires. It seemed to be his domain. The golden light screen turned into an absolute region that contained a terrifying golden storm. Countless golden lightning flashed amidst the raging gale. When the palms of Lord Liberty approached Lord Six Desires, he raised his head and bellowed as he glared at the other party. Instead of shattering into pieces, the golden screen expanded toward the surroundings instantly. It was as though an explosion had occurred. An alarming golden storm swept across the sky. The scene was akin to a real divine tribulation. The storm charged toward the 108,000 gigantic palms. Everywhere the storm passed, the palms were instantly sliced and crushed. It was as though no other power of the great path could coexist with the storm. Buzz. The destructive golden storm scoured the battlefield and expanded outward, trapping all 3 major cultivators in it. This caused the entire space to become the domain of Lord Six Desires. When faced with such a horrifying storm, even Lord Liberty had to take a few steps back. It looks like he has gone mad, commented Lord Yi as he looked at the scene below. Endless divine light shot out from the body of Lord Six Desires. Every beam of divine light was connected with the light screen, demonstrating his dominance over his domain. When Lord Yi and the others saw this, they understood that Lord Six Desires was using all his power to resist their attacks. He had become one with his domain. This was a trick that was unique to the cultivators who had survived the divine tribulations of the Great Path. However, once his domain was destroyed, Lord Six Desires would suffer painful consequences. The mildest outcome would damage his Great Path, his cultivation might be lowered due to it. Of course, he would most likely perish here if he didn't make it out alive. Therefore, he couldn't be concerned with other matters such as his cultivation. Rumble. Yet another frightening sound thundered. Lord Yi had attacked. A destructive black hole appeared in the sky above. From within it, a halberd materialized. It directly pierced the space and charged toward where Lord Six Desires was. As the halberd blasted down, a myriad of halberd shadows flashed. All the halberd shadows slashed downward simultaneously. The violent light of catastrophe destroyed everything in its path. However, right at this moment, the golden divine lights, which connected Lord Six Desires and the sky, took the form of divine trees. Vines and leaves sprouted out and wrapped around the halberds. Countless halberds were blocked. Only the strongest halberd that split the sky cleaved through the golden branches and continued crashing down toward Lord Six Desires. When he saw this attack coming, Lord Six Desires seemed to become divine light. Countless bolts of golden lightning burst forth and shot up toward the halberd that was crashing down. Lord Six Desires pointed at the sky, and his body collided with the halberd. The halberd was formed from the great path, and his body was similarly formed from a powerful way. When his finger and the halberd clashed, Lord Six Desires' figure also appeared beneath the halberd. The destructive storm grew stronger and swept out toward the surrounding regions. The cultivators from the outside world saw countless destructive beams of golden light of catastrophe sweeping out all around them. No one could withstand such terrifying aftershocks. Lord Six Desires, you have run out of luck, said Lord Yi. Lord Initial Zen had yet to attack. Among the three of them, Lord Initial Zen was still in peak condition right now. Lord Six Desires would not walk away from this battle alive. On the battlefield, Yi Futian was also present. Divine light circled around him, preventing his body from being destroyed. Around him, the faint light of Buddha appeared. He revealed a strange look as he glanced at Lord Initial Zen in the distance. Even now, Lord Initial Zen still remembered to protect Yi Futian. Things were not going well for Lord Six Desires. Chapter 2442, Mutual Betrayal. Lord Liberty and Lord Yi unleashed even greater power of the Great Path. The illusory figure of the god which stood behind Lord Liberty sent out another palm strike. The gigantic palm crushed the heavens. Dull rumbling sounds thundered. It was as though the sky was collapsing. Far away, on the ground of the region where the attack was sent out, gigantic palm marks appeared. The ground sank. The scene was shocking to behold. If anyone were standing in that region, they would have been crushed to death. Lord Yi did not stop attacking either. The destructive storm intensified. Halberds surged into Lord Six Desires' domain of the Great Path, intending to pierce his body. Under the ferocious attacks of two great cultivators, Lord Six Desires could no longer escape unscathed. You bullies have gone too far, barked Lord Six Desires coldly. As he said this, his body turned into a body of the Great Path. Divine light dazzled around him. It was as though his body was no longer made of flesh, instead, it was made of the way. His body was translucent, and golden divine light radiated from within it. His body expanded quickly. As Lord Six Desires grew larger, his body resonated with his domain in the sky. Since you have acted so presumptuously, pay the price for your actions. Lord Six Desires uttered these words coldly. A beam of divine light shot up to the heavens and swept across space. The next moment, an unparalleled divine halo burst forth from Lord Six Desires' body. An enormous illusory figure, which was akin to a god, appeared and merged with the domain. The presence of the god could be sensed in every corner of this space. Golden destructive vines and leaves extended outwards and enshrouded the space. Lord Liberty and Lord Yi were also swathed by vines and leaves. Their facial expressions turned somewhat ugly as they looked at Lord Six Desires. This fellow had gone berserk. The destructive divine light invaded where they stood. The branches that spread out curled towards them, even towards the gigantic divine illusory figure. They seemed to want to consume them in this domain of the Great Path. Lord Initial Zen, destroy his original body, said Lord Yi. They clashed directly with Lord Six Desires and were now restraining each other. It was difficult for them to pull themselves away. Only Lord Initial Zen was still in peak condition and was not entangled in Lord Six Desires' attack. He could still make his move. Lord Six Desires had already gone mad. He was attacking them without restraint. All his attacks were mutually destructive. If Lord Initial Zen were to attack now, he only needed to attack Lord Six Desires' original body and shatter it to kill him. Their chances of victory were extremely high. After all, they were three lords joining forces. It would not be a surprise for them to be able to kill Lord Six Desires. It was now time for the decisive victory. Lord Initial Zen's body shone with divine light. The golden light of Buddha was dazzling. An astonishing pressure was faintly emanating from him. However, he stood there motionlessly, seemingly having no intention of attacking. This scene stunned Lord Yi and Lord Liberty. Lord Initial Zen, what are you waiting for? Kill him to prevent future trouble, Lord Liberty shouted. Lord Six Desire's attack of the Great Path had already entangled his divine illusory figure. The destructive light of the catastrophe that was at its peak was spreading towards him. This was the best time to kill Lord Six Desires. If Lord Initial Zen did not attack him now, the two lords might be in trouble. Lord Six Desires already disregarded all consequences. However, after hearing Lord Liberty's words, Lord Initial Zen still showed no signs of wanting to attack. He just stood there. This caused Lord Liberty and Lord Yi to feel uneasy. Their facial expressions suddenly became exceptionally ugly. They clearly realized what was going on. Lord Initial Zen did not intend to attack. He was doing this intentionally. No wonder Lord Initial Zen had not truly attacked all this while. He had actually intentionally done so to backstab them. If the three of them were all gravely injured, who would swoop in to reap the benefits? Lord Initial Zen was also from a Buddhist sect and was in the same sect as Saint Shunchan. Even if Lord Six Desires escaped, among the three of them, the one who worried the least about Lord Six Desires seeking revenge against him was also Lord Initial Zen. When they thought of this, the two of them felt regret for being so careless. They initially thought that there would be no issues with the three of them joining forces to kill Lord Six Desires. Yet, they never imagined that Lord Initial Zen would actually stab them in the back at a time like this. Lord Six Desires, why don't we all stop attacking at the same time? Lord Yi suggested decisively. Since Lord Initial Zen betrayed him and Lord Liberty, then he would give up. He would rather forsake the mission than let Lord Initial Zen's scheme come to fruition. All right. Both of you, stop first, said Lord Six Desires. Lord Yi was hesitant to stop attacking first, but Lord Six Desires was in a state of self-defense. Unless Lord Yi and Lord Liberty ceased attacking, it was impossible for the latter to remove his domain first. Lord Six Desires' request was founded. Lord Yi communicated with Lord Liberty through transmitted thought. Then, the power of the Great Path exerted by the two of them gradually lessened. They seemed to be withdrawing their attacks slowly. When Lord Six Desires sensed this, he stopped attacking them too. However, he did not retract his domain. Right at this moment, an overwhelming might suddenly burst forth. Endless golden lights of catastrophe pierced the space and charged towards Lord Liberty and Lord Yi. At the same time, Lord Yi and Lord Liberty also let out a roar. Their bodies transformed into Wei, destroying everything that came in their path. Both parties actually happened to launch an attack at the same time. Clearly, they were wary of the other party and had no intention of giving up the battle at all. They intended to first lower the guard of the other party before they struck a killing blow. After they experienced the betrayal of Lord Initial Zen, how could they possibly trust each other? All three of them plotted to strike and kill the other party first. Standing at the side, Lord Initial Zen quietly observed everything that was happening. The three strong cultivators delivered their strongest blows simultaneously. Destructive divine light spread out, forming a halo in the sky. The ring expanded outwards towards the vast space. Far away from the battlefield, many cultivators on the ground saw the destructive halo. They could sense the menacing auras brewing all the way on the battlefield. Their hearts trembled violently. How scary was that blow? Yi Futian's body was protected by the light of Buddha, but he was still sent flying backward by the shockwave. His divine body shook, and he was pushed back a great distance. He was no longer in the region where the Six Desires' heavenly palace used to be. After the destructive divine light dissipated, when Yi Futian looked over in their direction once again, Lord Liberty, Lord Yi as well as Lord Six Desires appeared in three different locations. All three of them were gravely injured. Powerful figures such as Lord Liberty and Lord Yi were actually dyed red in blood. Their auras were weak. Golden destructive divine light circled around their bodies. It seemed that it was still destroying their bodies and spiritual souls. They had suffered severe injuries. Of course, Lord Six Desires was equally injured. Right now, he was extremely frail. His current aura paled in comparison with his aura at peak condition. His body was slightly bent over, and he was not standing straight. Blood oozed out from the corner of his mouth. His spiritual soul was damaged, and his ability was drastically weakened. When Futian saw this scene, his heart stirred. He did not know how much of Lord Six Desires' ability was left. However, he had paid the price. Currently, among the 4 powerful cultivators, only Lord Initial Zen was still at peak condition. He had been observing on the sidelines and had not participated in the battle. After the destructive light halo dissipated, he stood amidst the light of Buddha. The golden light of Buddha shone and was dazzling beyond comparison. At the moment, Lord Initial Zen would be the person to decide everything. Chapter 2443, Fight to the Death. Lord Initial Zen clasped his hands together and evoked the name of Buddha. The sound of Buddha reverberated and resounded throughout the void as the golden light of Buddha shrouded the infinite space. In an instant, the light of Buddha was shining all over this world. Land within a radius of thousands of miles was under this light. A golden light screen appeared between heaven and earth as if setting up a domain of its own. Lord Initial Zen, who had not made a move until now, finally took action. For a time, the other 3 lords felt a coldness growing inside of them. Lord Yi was the most powerful person in Yemor Heaven, and Lord Liberty, too, was the most powerful figure of Liberty Heaven. They were both high and mighty existences that reigned above all living beings. However, at this moment, they felt nothing but remorse. If they had been more cautious, perhaps all this could be avoided. Everything they had done had paved the way for one man. Now, Lord Initial Zen was in a position to do whatever he wanted. Who else could stop him? Lord Six Desires was full of hatred, but there was some satisfaction as well. He felt the pleasure of taking revenge against Lord Yi and Lord Liberty. Both of them were in the same position as he. Initial Zen, you and I have never had any grievances. I can let go of all that had happened today, and you can have Futian as well as the divine body. I will leave here and forget everything that happened. In the future, I will not do anything. With your strength and connections, you have no need to care about the likes of me. Lord Six Desire, admittedly, had been impulsive before. But now that he was grievously injured, he calmed down, and his instinct to survive kicked in. The hope was to leave here alive. As long as he could leave here, then there was still hope for everything. Lord Initial Zen glanced at him, still surrounded by the light of Buddha. As he drifted forward, he had a peaceful smile at the corner of his mouth. There are indeed no grievances between you and me, he said. However, since the matter has escalated to this point, why would I let you go? Such benevolent voice sent Lord Six Desires chills up and down his spine. When he looked at Lord Initial Zen, a faint sense of panic now filled his heart. Could Initial Zen be so ruthless that he really wanted to end him today? Lord Initial Zen was different from Lord Liberty and Lord Yi. He had an extensive background and had no fear regarding retribution. Even Saint Junchan was technically his senior brother and would let him off the hook. Six Desires, you have always prided yourself on your cleverness, but you have made the wrong decision at every turn. Do you know what the biggest mistake you made today was? Lord Initial Zen asked. Lord Six Desires looked at him, completely taken aback. At a time like this, Lord Initial Zen had the presence of mind to chat with him in leisure. What kind of mistake had he made today? How did Great Elder Mortian die? Lord Initial Zen looked at him and asked. He never fought Futian. How could you be so careless? With all 4 of us here, how dare you comprehend the mystery of the divine body? I didn't comprehend the mystery of the divine body, not all of it, just a little bit. If I had really comprehended all of it, would I show it? Lord Six Desires retorted. He realized something was amiss before, but now Lord Initial Zen's words reminded him of another possibility, and the look on his face was becoming more unsightly. That's why I said that you are being stupid. You didn't really comprehend the body at all, but you thought you did, even just a little bit. What you didn't know was that someone had deliberately aided you in sending you on your way to death. Not only did you not realize it, but you reveled in your greed instead, Lord Initial Zen continued. Lord Six Desires felt a chill in his heart. He turned his gaze to a direction far away, where Yi Futian was. He guessed what the answer would be. He had been fighting and had no time to think before, but everything became clear to him as soon as Lord Initial Zen spoke. Both Lord Yi and Lord Liberty glanced at Yi Futian in the distance, wondering what had happened. Yi Futian was a little surprised when he heard Lord Initial Zen's words. He didn't expect the first person who saw through the ploy would be Lord Initial Zen. Yi Futian had suspected that Lord Initial Zen was the most dangerous. He had been right about that. Lord Initial Zen looked at Lord Six Desires, the divine light still lingering. He continued, Six Desires, I must thank you since none of this would have been possible without you. After you die, I will take care of our young friend for you. Initial Zen, we are both cultivators in the Western world, and it was not easy for us to cultivate to the state we are in today. Why can't you just let me go? Lord Six Desires said as he looked at the Lord Initial Zen, seeking a way to stay alive. Since you can be killed or let go, why would I let you go? You have cultivated to this state, can't you understand this? Lord Initial Zen replied simply and clearly. Since they had already become enemies, he was a hidden threat. Nothing would persuade Lord Initial Zen otherwise. If Lord Six Desires had the opportunity to kill him, he most certainly would not pass it up. As soon as his words fell, a strong murderous intent shot from his eyes, and a terrifying aura erupted from him. A gigantic Buddha appeared above the sky, sheltering the sky and the sun. Lord Six Desires stared at that massive body of the Buddha, and a hint of hatred flashed through his eyes. Compared to Yi Futian's plotting, he hated Lord Initial Zen more. After all, he was the one who kept Yi Futian here first, so it was completely within his expectation for Yi Futian to plot against him for his own survival. Lord Initial Zen had not only plotted against him, but he also demanded his life, refusing to let him go. Naturally, he hated him even more. Today, would he die here? In his current state, facing Lord Initial Zen, who was in his peak form, chances were good that Lord Six Desires was unlikely to live to see another day. At this moment, a voice was transmitted into Lord Six Desires' ears. His heart trembled. At this moment between life and death, why are you still hesitating? Suddenly, a hint of decisiveness flashed through Lord Six Desires' eyes. The golden divine light was shining, going toward another direction. At this moment, the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor appeared from nowhere, and that golden divine light was pouring into it madly. Finally, something managed to disturb Lord Initial Zen's serenity. Lord Six Desires' soul was now entering the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. What was this going to accomplish? Do you want to die? Asked an indifferent voice. Just as Lord Initial Zen moved toward Lord Six Desires, the gigantic handprint of Buddhism directly blasted on the body, causing it to collapse immediately. It was pulverized under that terrifying attack. That's nuts. When Lord Yi and Lord Liberty witnessed this scene, their hearts trembled violently. If Lord Six Desires appeared crazy when he was dealing with them before, then he was completely insane at this moment and did not leave any way out for himself. Although individuals at their level could separate spiritual souls from bodies and may even remain strong, the fact remained that without a body, the spiritual soul had nowhere to return to. It would exist just like a lonely, wandering ghost. Even if there were the means of walk-in, the body that was hijacked might not be fitting. Lord Six Desires had to make this choice because he was driven into desperation. Lord Initial Zen refused to let him go and wanted to kill him. Lord Six Desires had no choice. If he didn't go to the extreme, the only thing that awaited him was death. Just as they thought, Lord Six Desires made a decision almost instantly after receiving Yi Futian's transmission. He had no choice, really. Either he would be killed outright or give up his physical body and seize the chance to avenge himself. Because his hatred was great, this choice had not been difficult at all. He had forsaken his body of flesh. Chapter 2444, Battling Initial Zen. What's happening? Lord Initial Zen was a little baffled. Was Lord Six Desires mad enough to abandon his physical body and allowed his spiritual soul to enter the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor? But what was the point? Lord Six Desires had not comprehended the divine body. Therefore, he had no ability to control the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. Unless, as Lord Initial Zen considered another possibility, he immediately glanced in the direction of Yi Futian, who was far in the distance. Could he have accomplished this? Instructing Lord Six Desires to control the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. In other words, he was using the spiritual soul of Lord Six Desires to unleash the power in the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. This was the only possible explanation for Lord Six Desires' steely resolve to abandon his own physical form so readily just for the opportunity of an all-out battle to the death. Boom! Lord Initial Zen had a thought, and suddenly, the Buddha that stood between heaven and earth blasted its palm prints downward. These golden palm prints were endless, sheltering the sky and the sun. That giant Buddha palm print in the middle, especially, was boundless and enormous. It directly slammed toward the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. But at this time, a most dreadful light exploded from the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. Countless runes flew out as the power of path obliteration swept through this corner of the sky. The divine body of the Great Emperor raised his hand and pointed ahead, countering the giant palm print that was blasting down. Numerous golden lights of destruction fell on the giant palm prints, containing the power of path obliteration, penetrating the palm prints readily. Soon, these gigantic palm prints began to pulverize like crazy. Even the palm prints that fell in the surrounding areas were destroyed by the blooming golden divine light. Lord Initial Zen regarded the sight in front of him with alarm. His attention was fixed on the divine body as he asked, "Are you Yi Futian or are you Six Desires?" At this moment, who was in control of this divine body? In the distance, the golden divine light that had enveloped this corner of the sky suddenly descended in one specific direction. It was attacking Yi Futian's actual physical location. As long as Yi Futian was taken down, it didn't matter if the divine body was controlled by Yi Futian or Lord Six Desires. This battle was over. But almost at the same moment, golden runes surrounded Yi Futian's entire body. A stream of light flashed across the void, and Yi Futian's body appeared behind the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, protected by divine light, to guard him against any potential attacks from his opponent. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty witnessed the sight in front of them. They secretly thought that had Lord Six Desires and Yi Futian joined hands earlier, and if Yi Futian told Lord Six Desires everything, perhaps Six Desires' body might have been preserved, and he would not have met such a miserable end. But the two sides were diametrically opposed, to begin with, each plotting against the other. Lord Six Desires had his own designs regarding Yi Futian, while Lord Initial Zen conspired against Lord Six Desires and the rest of them. But, in the end, it seemed that Yi Futian was the ultimate schemer, as he had hatched a plan of his own. In the end, who would profit? Yi Futian closed his eyes as his spiritual soul also separated from his body to enter the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. The divine light of the Great Path continuously poured into the divine body, like infinite branches and leaves. It integrated the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor and his own as if combining the two into one. The aura blooming from the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor was becoming more terrifying. When his eyes opened, a world of runes appeared. In this world, it seemed to be occupied by nothing but endless runes. Even Lord Initial Zen and the phantom of the ancient Buddha could not escape it. At this moment, Lord Initial Zen felt a strong sense of threat. In this world of runes, he detected an aura of path obliteration. And those divine lights that came down seemed to have the ability to destroy all powers of the Great Path. Lord Initial Zen, looking solemn, clasped his hands in front of him. The massive figure of Buddha behind him projected infinite golden rays. In this world of the runes, the infinite light of Buddha radiated as the endless light gathered in the void, turning into a gigantic and boundless symbol of Wan. The symbol of Wan revolved in the void, and a wave of mighty coercion erupted from above. Endless radiance sprinkled down as boundless and heavy energy permeated between heaven and earth. Accompanied by the sound of Buddha, the rotating symbol of WN continued pressing downwards, and countless rays of light attacked the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. However, the divine body also emitted incomparable divine light, turning into a golden light of catastrophe that could end all great paths. At the same time, countless runes turned into branches and leaves and continued to bloom upwards. That's the ability of Lord Six Desires. Lord Initial Zen sharpened his eyes when he saw this. Was Lord Six Desires the one controlling the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor after all? The body of Shunjia the Great Emperor seemed to be transformed into an ancient tree, and the branches and leaves were formed by those countless lights of catastrophe. It bloomed and grew until it had covered the entire sky. Then, it fell on that oppressive Buddhist symbol of WAN with a terrible thud. The symbol of WAN continued to press down. Its coercion was shocking and mighty, suppressing the world with unmatched prowess. Even the sky around them seemed to be on the verge of total collapse. With the descent of the runes, those branches and leaves, formed by the light of catastrophe, started to grow inside the runes and perpetrated within them. They seemed to have penetrated inside the symbol of WAN. Even as the divine seal fell downward, countless branches and leaves had gotten inside of it. The body of Shunjia the Great Emperor pointed towards the sky, and in an instant, countless divine lights exploded within the symbol of WAN. This massive and incomparable rune that had shielded the sky began bursting like crazy, shattered into countless spots of light, then dissipating into nothingness. The power of path obliteration. Lord Initial Zen's heart trembled when he felt that power. He could clearly sense the power of path obliteration contained within the blows dealt by Shunjia the Great Emperor. It was something that could destroy all great paths. More importantly, this was done under the condition that Lord Six Desires may not have absolute control over the divine body of the Great Emperor. Lord Initial Zen understood that Six Desires might have only achieved this by leveraging Yi Futian's spiritual soul. Otherwise, if Lord Six Desires had comprehended and obtained full control of this divine body by himself, the power with which it could be exerted would definitely not be limited to this. It might have crushed him with ease. It seemed that his opponent was still acting under considerable restraints. Just as he was considering all the possibilities, endless runes appeared in the void once again. Each rune had turned into a halo of light, and each halo puffed out the light of catastrophe as if forming a sword. Lord Initial Zen could feel that the threat was getting greater by the moment. With each proficient maneuver of the divine body exercised by his opponent, he may soon be in danger. A quick battle was in order if he wanted to smash his opponent's spirit soul once and for all, while Lord Six Desires was not yet familiar with the command of the divine body. When his thought turned to this, Lord Initial Zen's countenance changed as he clasped his hands in front of him and closed his eyes. Suddenly, the light of Buddha beamed all over the space, and numerous Buddhas appeared between heaven and earth. In this vast space, these Buddhas emerged from nowhere, all of them acting synchronously as him, as their presence engulfed this entire space. The sound of Buddha lingered, resounding throughout the world, and it was an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty both felt a painful tingling in their minds as their spiritual souls quaked. They had some difficulties maintaining their balance. This was the Buddhist supreme offensive technique, way of the sonic wave, which could eradicate someone's spiritual soul outright. The prowess of this sound could attack the spiritual souls even within the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. Chapter 2445, Murderous Intent. Boom. Drowned by the attacks of the sonic waves, the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor was knocked back a few steps, somewhat shaken. Watching what was happening gave Lord Initial Zen a cold satisfaction inside. These two were using their spiritual souls to control the divine body, therefore, the spiritual souls were an obvious weak point. As soon as their spiritual souls were eliminated, this battle would be over. Lord Initial Zen's eyes closed as the light of Buddha burned fervently. The great path sound of Buddha lingered, resounding through heaven and earth. The power of the sonic waves continued to sweep towards the divine body. But at this moment, Shunjia the Great Emperor managed to stabilize himself, and an even more dazzling divine light bloomed from the divine body. Infinite runes swept across this space, accompanied by the release of countless radiance. Even the power of that invisible sonic waves was being weakened. The sonic waves' attack was invisible and left no trace, but it was definitely weakening under the divine light. It was gradually being suppressed and destroyed bit by bit. The sonic waves continued getting weaker. The vast world was full of divine light radiated from the divine body. Path obliteration can obliterate all great paths. In its domain, no other powers of the great path are allowed. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty had sensed the true meaning hidden within this destructive attack, and their hearts palpitated as they watched. Furthermore, the power that erupted from the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor was clearly becoming stronger. If this were to continue, Lord Initial Zen was very likely to, as soon as Lord Initial Zen thought he had discovered his opponent's weak point, his great path sonic waves attack disintegrated. He couldn't help but began to worry. The power that was erupting from the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor was nearly invincible because it could annihilate any great paths. According to rumors, Xinjia the Great Emperor sought to contend with the heavenly path in ancient times. If the attacking power of Xinjia the Great Emperor was a kind of great path, then it could be a power much higher than theirs, so it was daring enough to compete with the heavenly path. This kind of power was nearly incomprehensible by the likes of them. Obviously, Yi Futian and Lord Six Desire's control over the divine body was getting stronger. Buzz. At this moment, a string of golden Buddhist beads appeared in Lord Initial Zen's hands. A horrific aura bloomed above the beads. There were 108 beads altogether, and each of the beads released a different kind of powerful aura, all of which stemmed from Buddhism. The power of the Great Path madly poured into the Buddhist beads. Then, Lord Initial Zen waved his hand, and beads flew out, only to reappear in the sky above the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. It was expanding continuously, turning into a massive halo, emitting the light of Buddha as far as the eye could see. An extremely holy Buddhist divine glory sprinkled down from the void. Lord Initial Zen clasped his hands together in utmost piety. The power of the great path above the divine body rushed into the Buddhist beads with madness, and suddenly all 108 Buddhist beads burst open, turning into 108 sets of Buddhas. All 108 Buddhas then united into one body. Above the firmament, the sound of Buddha lingered as a horrific aura diffused from each and every Buddha. The auras of all 108 Buddhas descended at the same time. Its collective might was enough to overpower the heavens. Clang! Voices came out as all 108 Buddhas moved in unison. The giant handprints blasted down, crushing the void, and suddenly, countless symbols of Wan appeared. They slammed down on the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor at the same time as frightening rumbling could be heard. The entire space seemed on the verge of collapse. Xinjia the Great Emperor raised his head slightly and looked at the Buddhas in the sky. From within the divine body, even more branches and leaves now bloomed. There was a divine light surrounding the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, as a massive golden lotus could be seen faintly. Branches and leaves seemed to grow out of the golden lotus. This golden lotus first opened up with 6 petals, then 6 turned into 36 petals, and continued like so in repetition, going round and round, moving towards the giant handprints that slammed down from the void in attack. The dreadful handprints and the symbols of Wan had all been blocked as if they were being swallowed by the golden lotus. What's more terrifying was that every golden lotus was conceived by the destructive light of catastrophe. The lotus was born between heaven and earth, intending to envelop the boundless space and swallow up all 108 Buddhas. 6 Desire Lotus. Lord Yi's heart was trembling when he saw the scene before him. This was Lord Six Desire's life spirit, hidden within his spiritual soul. And at this moment, it was blooming, carrying the path obliteration power inside Xinjia the Great Emperor. There was no telling how frightening it would be. The 6 Desires Lotus was known for its ability to swallow the paths of all things and produce the catastrophe of destruction. The endless desires gave rise to endless lotuses. It seems that Lord Six Desires is really controlling the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. He is maneuvering it with more proficiency. Initial Zen is going to be in trouble, Lord Liberty said to Lord Yi via voice transmission. But the two could only watch on the sidelines. Both of them had been grievously injured and had no way to participate in the battle at the moment. All they could do was wait to die. More importantly, Lord Initial Zen was the one who set them up, so there was no way they would be participating in this battle. They were content to watch from the side, but a bit of worry troubled them both. Now, they probably wouldn't be able to get away even if they wanted to. The legend had it that the 6 desires lotus contained endless desires. At this moment, endless lotus flowers were born, intending to swallow that 108 Buddhas. All 108 shadows of Buddha release a boundless and splendid light of Buddha. An even more majestic shadow of Buddha now appeared above the firmament, as if its head was pushing against the heavens as the feet were planted firmly on the ground. The feet stomped down without warning, wanting to smash the golden lotus. The golden lotus blossoms shattered and pulverized one by one, but the 6 desires lotus seemed to be born out of endless desires. Thus as it died, it was reborn endlessly and forever until it shrouded all 108 Buddhas. Then it turned toward that enormous and incomparable shadow of Buddha to swallow it up next. In an instant, the 6 desire lotus that was born continuously submerged the entire sky. Then, a light of destruction bloomed from every golden lotus so that all 108 Buddhas proceeded to explode and pulverize. Even that boundless gigantic shadow of the Buddha was being eaten up little by little, then collapsed in total destruction. Puh, Lord Initial Zen groaned as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The light of Buddha on his body dimmed considerably. His eyes looked towards the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. "My friend, I was never malicious to you. Why should it be like this between us? Stop now, and you can name any conditions you want," he pleaded. Lord Initial Zen wanted to negotiate a truce. Yi Futian laughed coldly inside when he heard the others plead. Lord Initial Zen had a scheming heart. He had set up Lord Yi and Lord Liberty, wanting to kill Lord 6 Desires to avoid future trouble. It was still an unknown whether he would move against the other 2 lords. As for himself, if Lord 6 Desires died and he fell into the hands of Lord Initial Zen, his fate would be thousands of times worse. Lord Initial Zen would definitely keep him under tighter control than Lord 6 Desires ever had. Therefore, Yi Futian had planned accordingly and executed the plan as expected. He was lucky. He was right that Lord 6 Desires didn't hesitate when he was forced to face that impossible situation. Elder had misunderstood. "It's not me who was doing all this," said a calm voice from Shunjia the Great Emperor. It was light as a feather and carefree. It sounded as if nothing had anything to do with him, as if it were Lord 6 Desires who wanted to continue this fatal exchange. "Surely, my young friend is joking. How could he continue to control the divine body of the Great Emperor if you stopped?" Lord Initial Zen continued. He knew very well that Lord 6 Desires could no longer turn back as his body no longer existed. No matter what, 6 Desires would want to kill him anyway. The only chance he had was to talk to Yi Futian. This time, Yi Futian didn't pay any attention to him. The divine light sparkled on Shunjia the Great Emperor as countless golden lotus flowers swallowed toward Lord Initial Zen. Chapter 2446, Unwilling to Let Go. Lord Initial Zen retreated quickly with incredible speed. However, above the firmament, those infinite runes seemed to transform into golden lotus flowers at this instant, swallowing up all the great paths. An enormous lotus flower of 6 desires bloomed and swallowing in the direction of Lord Initial Zen, including that gigantic Buddha behind him. "My young friend, you already have no place to go in the land of divine prefecture. Do you want to be hunted endlessly in the Western world as well?" said Lord Initial Zen as mighty as ever, resounding between heaven and earth. Of course, I don't want that, Yi Futian thought, but there was nowhere for him to go at the moment. Ever since he came to the Western world, from Great Elder Mortian to Lord 6 Desires, and now Lord Initial Zen, they all had regarded him as prey or as treasure, something to take for themselves. This being the case, all he could do was to teach them a lesson and make them pay. In addition, it was not like he had another choice either. Even if he could let Lord Initial Zen go, would the other be able to reciprocate the courtesy? This possibility was highly unlikely. If Lord Initial Zen did not die in this battle, he would surely try to take him down and keep Yi Futian firmly in his hold. Who knew what that would be like? Therefore, killing him was the only way. The light of Buddha was burning fervently as a supreme power of Buddhism sprung from Lord Initial Zen. However, the infinite six desires golden lotus moved swiftly to swallow it up. In the golden lotus, Lord Initial Zen could see the elusive figure of Lord Six Desires, whose face was horribly distorted. Coupled with immense anger, he was coming to swallow him whole. In an instant, that enormous phantom of the Buddha began to collapse, followed by a chilling scream. Terrifying golden divine light bloomed like mad as Lord Initial Zen growled angrily inside the golden lotus. Then an image emerged, in which many Buddhist cultivators seemed to have appeared. There seemed to be a sacred Buddhist mountain, and on a golden lotus seat was a figure bathed in the light of Buddha. Its appearance was extremely solemn and dignified. There was a holiness that was beyond description. "Senior brother, avenge me," Lord Initial Zen howled, then the image disappeared. The power of path obliteration raged wildly, destroying his body as well as his spiritual soul. Horrific aura rampaged in this space, and it didn't take long before the body of Lord Initial Zen dissipated into nothing. His soul and spirit dispersed as he died. He disappeared entirely between heaven and earth. His dead. Someone with the status of a Buddhist lord had been slain just like that. Moreover, he died at the hands of a youngster from Divine Prefecture. Lord Initial Zen had used those three great lords, his own peers, certain in his belief that he would be the ultimate winner. But in the end, he was tricked by Yi Futian. Yi Futian used the spiritual soul of Lord Six Desires to unleash an even stronger state of the divine body, causing it to burst with an unimaginable power of path obliteration. In any world, there would not be many existences at the same level as Lord Initial Zen. Both Lord Yi and Lord Liberty were greatly disturbed in their hearts. They had thought of many possibilities, but never the one in which the body of Lord of Six Desires was totally destroyed and ended with Lord Initial Zen's death. Furthermore, both of them were severely wounded, and their combat effectiveness had been greatly reduced. All this was so surreal. Only Yi Futian, after getting rid of the two major threats, Lord Six Desires and Lord Initial Zen, was likely to move forward. With nothing more than his spiritual soul, Lord Six Desires had no way of posing any threat to Yi Futian. As they looked at the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, they noticed that the divine light inside the divine body was raging. The divine body was moving frantically on its own. It seemed a little unsteady at times. Both of them looked on with some confusion, but as soon as they looked at each other, they guessed what was happening. After getting rid of Lord Initial Zen, Lord Six Desires must still have some resentment in his heart, and his spiritual soul now wanted to fight for the chance to seize the control of the divine body. Or perhaps, Yi Futian didn't intend to allow the spiritual soul of Six Desires to walk out of here alive. A faint roar came from inside the divine body, and a terrifying divine light bloomed. Clearly, the two were locked in a confrontation. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty looked at each other, and there was a hint of greed that flashed through their eyes. But it vanished just as quickly as it had appeared. At present, even as lords, they needed to pay more attention to Yi Futian. Both of them had participated in setting up Lord Six Desires. This has indirectly led to his body being totally annihilated. Lord Initial Zen was killed mostly because of the powers borrowed from Lord Six Desires. Yi Futian had made good use of both parties in achieving his own goal. If they were just the tiniest bit careless, they might also be at risk, so they had to be extra cautious. Fortunately, Yi Futian and Lord Six Desires were mortal enemies. If they had formed a true alliance, the next target after eliminating Lord Initial Zen would be the two of them. In that case, they would be in deep trouble. Obviously, whether it was Yi Futian or Lord Six Desires, they were each plotting against the other and had started colluding. The outcome remained to be seen. "Do you want to leave him alone?" Lord Yi asked Lord Liberty via voice transmission. "Wait until there's a decisive outcome between them, and then we can reassess the situation," Lord Liberty responded. The problem now was that even if they decided not to move against Yi Futian, it wouldn't necessarily mean that Yi Futian wouldn't move against them later. Both men were trying to regain their strength and ease their injuries as much as possible so they could recover some of their power once again. Within the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, violent booming continued. It seemed that it would never end. Finally, a growl emerged. "I admit defeat. Let me stay. I can help you." This growl was tinged with wretchedness. It was the voice of Lord Six Desires. Obviously, he had fallen into a disadvantage in this altercation. If it was simply a contest between spiritual souls, Yi Futian could never come close to touching Lord Six Desires. However, within the divine body, Yi Futian was its absolute commander and had an undisputed advantage. Everything seemed to return to where it had all began. Yi Futian, who was currently controlling the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, turned to face Lord Yi and Lord Liberty. "I do not wish to make too many enemies. How about you two elders stop at this point?" These two great cultivators had both survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. Although both of them had been seriously injured, Yi Futian was not sure that he could overcome both of them. As a rule, people at this level must be treated with extreme caution. Today's matter was a misunderstanding in itself. "We know that Lord Six Desires restricted your movements without cause. All we wanted to do was help set you free from those chains. We didn't expect Lord Initial Zen to do what he did. However, since the matter is over, let us be done as well," Lord Yi replied. "In that case, many thanks to you both." As Yi Futian was making his reply, he moved backward carefully. The divine brilliance was still shining over his body. Yi Futian continued to stay vigilant. He didn't want to risk a fight with these two opponents, but it didn't mean he would lower his defense. For these two great lords to declare this was just some type of misunderstanding was ludicrous, to say the least. They were no different from Lord Initial Zen, except that they were not quite as calculating as he. Now, Lord Yi transmitted his voice to Lord Liberty as a terrible rumbling sound came out. The will of the Great Path enveloped this part of the world and hovered over this area. Even if they were severely injured. Chapter 2447, The Search. Buzz. Divine light bloomed upon Yi Futian's body as infinite runes shrouded the boundless space. He took one look at the two lords across from him, seemingly wanting to bring them into his realm of total annihilation. Lord Liberty and Lord Yi were both surrounded by the divine light of sky-reaching Great Path. Even if they were deeply wounded, they could still communicate with the Great Path, gathering incredible power. Lord Liberty took a deep breath as a towering divine shadow appeared. It looked like the heavenly god of liberty itself, unleashing a boundless and massive handprint at Yi Futian. Lord Yi, likewise, was gathering a terrifying power of destruction. This shockingly destructive light aimed at Yi Futian for the kill. It was akin to the way of total annihilation. Shunjia the Great Emperor's body was brilliant all over, surrounded by divine light, and covered in infinite runes. A terrible attack descended to crush the runes. It blasted on the divine body, knocking the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor back. At the same time, divine lights came down from the firmament as if formed by those infinite runes. The incomparable divine sword traversed heaven and earth, zooming in on Lord Yi and Lord Liberty for the kill. The faces of these two changed slightly, busy gathering the power of the Great Path to resist. But they had already suffered heavy injuries, their bodies bore the scars of the Great Path, and their last tyrannical blow against Yi Futian had, in fact, pared their own strength down to the extreme. When the divine sword fell, it actually broke through their defenses and slashed toward them. Accompanied by the brilliance of these two divine lights, the two fell rapidly as sounds of howling and cracking came from the void. Lord Liberty and Lord Yi were once again penetrated by the light from the divine sword. They both let out a muffled groan as they spat out some blood. Their faces paled, and their injuries deepened with this most recent blow. Yi Futian and Lord Yi appeared in two completely different directions, with great distance between them. At this time, the divine light above the divine body of Shunjia the Great Emperor dimmed. He had also sustained a harsh blow from the two powerful cultivators, which caused the divine body to suffer considerable shock. His spiritual soul was also in great pain. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty managed to stabilize their stance but coughed out a mouthful of blood. Their auras were now exceedingly weak. They looked at Yi Futian, and their eyes were filled with coldness. It seemed like they were still unwilling to let go of Yi Futian and planned to continue their joint attack. The great path fluctuated violently with the turning of a mind. However, at this moment, a massive telekinetic power washed over them. They frowned before they saw a beautiful figure descending. She was surrounded by divine light, and her cold eyes were fixed on the two of them. The person who arrived was none other than Hua Jiyu. She hadn't left with Blind Tai and the others but was hanging about nearby. She came here as soon as she heard about the battle. At this moment, in those cold and clear eyes of hers, there was a strong murderous intent. "Jiyu, let's go," Yi Futian said in a voice that seemed uncharacteristically weak, plucking at Hua Jiyu's heartstrings. Her eyes refocused on him, and instantly, her gaze softened. Her shape flickered. She did not bother to heed Lord Yi or the other one any longer but chose to leave with the body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. Yi Futian loathed to let her get tangled in this mess because he still had some reservations. Even though Lord Yi and Lord Liberty were greatly weakened, they were existences that had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path. Such characters were a tremendous threat as long as they were alive. He was more worried about Jiyu being endangered that he rather retreat for now. Lord Yi and Lord Liberty did not bother to chase after them either. The truth was that they were unable to give chase, as they were greatly incapacitated at this time. As they watched the pair leaving, they sighed silently inside. Yi Futian was a dead man walking. The addition of another Ren Huang wouldn't make any difference. Since Lord Initial Zen had informed Saint Zhenchan of his death, presumably the cultivators from Zhenchan Temple were now on their way over. None of the four great lords were able to take down Yi Futian. In turn, they were set up by Yi Futian time and time again. Now, 2 were dead, and 2 were wounded. It was an outcome that was indescribably humiliating. Whatever the future held, the 2 of them probably would have no part to play after this miserable display. No one expected that a youngster from the Divine Prefecture would make such a mess out of things. "Let's go," said Lord Yi. Then, he and Lord Liberty dragged their injured bodies away from the battlefield. After they had left for a while, rays of divine light fell from the sky over the remnant of the divine mountain. A group of people descended soon after the light, all of them radiating with divine light. It seemed as if they were divine generals of sorts. Their brilliance was blinding and mighty. They were shrouded with a hint of the light of Buddha, but they were no monks. Among the cultivators from the Western world, though many top figures cultivated in methods that stemmed from Buddhism, it did not mean that they were believers of Buddhism. Take the overall forces within 6 desires heaven and search thoroughly, the man in the lead said, loud and clear. Immediately, the cultivators next to him broke through the air and departed towards various directions in the distance. The cultivator in the lead looked again in the distance and saw quite a lot of cultivators there. They were also present in 6 desires heaven previously, but they had no way to intervene in that battle, nor did they dare chase after Yi Futian. When Yi Futian left, 2 lords had fallen, while 2 more were seriously wounded. Who would dare make a move without careful consideration? "Show me everything you saw," the man demanded. Right away, someone stepped forward. As his divine consciousness surged, an image appeared in the void, but only in parts. The Great Path had blocked off most of the space during the battle, and they could not witness many great battle scenes. Under the condition at the time, no one else dared to enter deep into the battlefield. Mere ripples from the battle would easily destroy them. After witnessing what little he could glean from the battle, the cultivator in the lead had a golden divine light in his eyes. Was the divine body of Xinjia the Great Emperor as powerful as this? He should have been seriously injured. If you would have intercepted him, he couldn't possibly get away. The leader glanced at those in the far distance and commented. Among them, there was no lack of those who had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path. However, because of the devastating consequences of the 4 lords, they didn't want to detain Yi Futian. "Let's set off with the search." As the man commanded once more, all those cultivators levitated into the air immediately, heading for the different directions within Six Desires Heaven, ready to sniff out any trace of Futian. Six Desires Heaven was a big world unimaginably expansive with endless cities, domains, numerous celestial mountains, as well as cultivation courts. After Hua Jiyu took Futian away from Six Desires Heaven, they did not go too far from where the fight took place. They came to a city and found a place to settle down. Traces of invisible aura fluctuated to cover up the place where they were resting. It was invisible and shapeless but capable of isolating any aura or divine consciousness from other top cultivators. This was a forbidden zone created by Futian with his life spirit. Despite its perfect fit with the house and the courtyard, it was an independent small world completely undetectable by outsiders. The divine consciousness of top figures in the cultivation world could cover an extensive territory with a single sweep. But as they were used to conduct their search with their divine consciousness and not with their naked eyes, as long as their divine consciousness was cut off, it was no easy task to find a single person in this vast and endless land of Six Desires Heaven. In the courtyard, Futian's spiritual soul had already returned to his body, as he had his eyes closed and was deep in cultivation, bathing in the aura of the great path of life. The aura from the ancient tree of the world in his life spirit had penetrated every part of his body, restoring and repairing it, as his spiritual soul was being nourished. Chapter 2448, Master and Disciple. A month later, in the courtyard where Futian was staying, he was still cultivating with his eyes closed. The aura of the Great Path shrouded his entire body as he bathed in the brilliance of the Great Path. At this point, his body, as well as his spiritual soul, had almost fully recovered. He did not let Blind Tai and the others come back for him. After all, they were still in the territory of Six Desires Heaven. Saint Zhenchan had dispatched cultivators from all sides to search for them in Six Desires Heaven. They had turned the place upside down and inside out in their attempt to find him. At a time like this, he could not possibly allow Blind Tai and the rest of them to risk their lives by coming here. As long as they were outside of Six Desires Heaven, they were safe enough. In this 1 month's time, Futian did not leave the courtyard at all. At this moment, there was an invisible movement coming from outside the courtyard. It entered like invisible ripples that came in waves, and only Futian had perceived this sensation. However, he didn't pay much attention to it. He continued to cultivate with his eyes closed because he already knew who had come. Hua Jiyu was sitting close to Futian. At this moment, her beautiful eyes opened as she looked forward and saw a young woman. This woman had exceptionally beautiful and clear eyes. Her refined features were particularly pleasing to look at. Her name was Hong Yi. She was the daughter of the owner of this house. She happened upon here once by chance and saw Hua Jiyu. She had been so taken, even enamored with Hua Jiyu, that she asked Hua Jiyu to accept her as a disciple. Hua Jiyu had never thought of accepting a disciple before, so she didn't agree to it immediately. However, Hong Yi was not deterred and would often come to visit. Gradually, Hua Jiyu and Futian had developed some affection for this young woman and had recruited her help in conducting some small tasks, such as making inquiries about things happening in the outside world. Of course, the main purpose was to find out more about Saint Zhenchan's search for them. In addition, he wanted to obtain a detailed map of this world. Not just the names of the places, but also the top powers and top cultivators in each world. Futian wanted to get a clear picture of the basic situation in the Western world. However, Hong Yi's cultivation base was not very high, so it was not easy for her to get what Futian wanted. It took a lot of time and effort, but she finally got what he was after today. Goddess, this is the jade slip of the map. Once your divine consciousness enters it, you will be able to see everything, Hong Yi said while she took out a jade slip and handed it to Hua Jiyu. Once Hua Jiyu took hold of it, Hong Yi smiled sweetly and said, "Goddess, can I ask you to be my teacher now?" Hua Jiyu looked at the woman in front of her, a little surprised. She didn't expect the other to be so persistent. "You will leave sooner or later, and I may disappear at any time," Hua Jiyu said to Hong Yi. "It doesn't matter. I don't mind," Hong Yi continued. While Hua Jiyu was still hesitating, Futian, who was next to her, opened his eyes and smiled at her. Ji, he said, since Hong Yi is sincere, why don't you accept her as a disciple? Although she may leave at any time, while we are cultivating here, we may leave something behind. Hua Ji immediately understood Yi Futian's intention. When he saw how sincere Hong Yi was, he wished that Hua Ji would not care so much about the formalities between teacher and disciple. While they were here, they could teach Hong Yi a thing or two and mentor her just for the sake of making acquaintances with one another. The relationship of teacher and disciple had no real impact on any of them. Glancing at Yi Futian, Hua Ji pondered for a moment. She then nodded at Hong Yi. She handed Yi Futian the jade slip she had received. Thank you, teacher. Hong Yi was ecstatic when she saw that Hua Ji had finally agreed to her request. She immediately bowed down and said, Disciple Hong Yi greets the teacher. Hua Ji nodded slightly and said, although you asked me to be your teacher, my cultivation may not be suitable for you. I will teach you some suitable methods, and if you have any questions regarding cultivation, you may also ask me. The Hua Ji from once upon a time had practically no cultivational experience to speak of. But now, she had emerged with incarnations of many lifetimes, which were all part of her memory. She knew far more cultivation methods than Yi Futian, although none would be as powerful as the divine methods cultivated by him. It's you, teacher. As long as it is taught by teacher, Hong Yi will work hard, Hong Yi said with mirth. The first time she was here, she had sensed that Hua Ji was extraordinary and saw her as someone not of this world. Whether it was her visage, temperament, her every word and action, or that hidden aura, she realized that Hua Ji was definitely a very powerful cultivator. Of course, Yi Futian was a powerful cultivator himself, though he was a little too conspicuous with his white hair and white clothing. Hong Yi couldn't very well ask him to be her teacher in front of Hua Ji. Hua Ji nodded and said, why don't you go back first? I need to organize the cultivation methods in my memory and decide which ones are suitable for you. Very well, Hong Yi nodded agreeably. I will go now. With that, she smiled and left. After she left, Hua Ji looked at Yi Futian and saw that he looked at her with a smile. She then asked him, why did you want me to accept her as a disciple? Buddhism talks about predestination, doesn't it? Since we are cultivating in the Western world, destiny is the reason why you two met. So you can leave something here, even if it is just to create a pleasant memory, Yi Futian responded. When he was speaking, he took the jade slip from Hua Ji. His divine consciousness directly penetrated it. In an instant, many images began appearing in his mind. Soon, the world of Buddhism made its impression in Yi Futian's mind. When he withdrew his divine consciousness, he took a deep breath and was a little surprised. He didn't expect that the strength of the Western world was so powerful that it was on par with the divine prefecture. The rest of their time was spent in relative quietude. Hong Yi came here often to consult Hua Ji about cultivation. Sometimes she would ask Yi Futian as well. Once, she even asked curiously, Teacher, what is your current realm in Rahuang? Hua Ji ignored her, so Hong Yi looked at Yi Futian. But Yi Futian just smiled without saying a word. He did not respond to her question. It must be a very powerful level. Maybe you have already surpassed the lower Renhuang realm. That would mean middle Renhuang, Hong Yi smiled and guessed. After cultivating for a period of time, she left again. These days, she came around quite frequently. Sometimes she stayed in their place days at a time. One day, when Hong Yi came to the courtyard again, it seemed that her eyes had undergone some change. They looked different from before. It was slightly uncanny. Hua Ji looked at her, clearly sensing something was awry. Hong Yi, what's the matter? Yi Futian's perception was so keen. Hong Yi glanced at him when she heard Yi Futian's question. She bit her lip lightly, seeming to be in some pain while struggling inside. It must be false, Hong Yi reminded herself. She then said to Hua Ji, Teacher, please leave here quickly. Hua Ji frowned slightly, but Yi Futian tensed up. These words had unsettled him. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.